price hike last month. The Energy Department says all grades of petrol will cost R1.21 more per litre. Diesel will go up by between R1.05 and R1.18 a litre. Paraffin users will pay 64 cents more for a litre, and maximum retail price of LP gas is going up by 41 cents per kilogram. The Department of Energy spokesperson Robert Marquez says the latest increases are largely attributed to higher international oil prices and a weaker rand exchange rate.
The higher average oil prices and weaker rand against the US dollar during the period under review. The slate levy remain unchanged at 0 cents per litre. The minister, with the concurrence of the Minister of Finance, increased the IP tracer dye levy from 0.1 to 1 cent per litre in the price structures of diesel. Transnet Pipeline has decommissioned the Kroonstad pipeline from 31st December 2023. It has affected fuel transport in 4 magisterial district zones, ranging in an increase of 0.9 to a decrease of about 5.7 cents per litre.
Police in the Western Cape have requested assistance from the public after a 3-year-old boy went missing in Kayamandi and Stellenbosch yesterday. Police spokesperson Wesley Tweak says Enzo Mchobeni was playing outside his home before his disappearance.
According to reports, the child was playing outside his home in 8th Avenue, Kayamandi, between 3 in the afternoon and 7 in the evening. When his father went out to look for him, he was nowhere to be found. At the time of his disappearance, he was wearing a long-sleeved blue top, cargo pants, and blue Batman sandals.
Municipal Workers Union SAMU says it's concerned about the slow pace of police investigations into a charge of common assault opened against the mayor of Machabeng municipality, Tandukolo Kalipa. The charges were laid by the mayor's bodyguard on the 28th of February after he allegedly assaulted him multiple times in front of other colleagues while returning from an imbizo. The bodyguard is a SAMU member. The union's provincial secretary Tisetso Mahlatsi says to date, Kalipa has neither been charged nor arrested. And finally, Somalia has become a full member of the East African community after completing all the steps required to gain complete membership of the regional bloc. In November, the heads of state of the other EAC member states agreed to admit Somalia into the bloc. The move could boost economic growth in the country, which is still recovering from 3 decades of war. Recapping the top story, the South African National Editors Forum has made an appeal to the country's competition authorities to ensure fair compensation and sharing of data between local media houses and global digital platforms. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Do business big. Sign up to selected Telkom Business LTE and fiber deals and get a free NSBC voucher worth 3,950 rands. T's and C's apply. Guests don't stay for the elevator music. Your name is what they rate because you are the business. Get Core Fiber Lite 40 by 20 megabits per second for 549 rands per month from Telkom Business. The first 1,000 businesses to sign up to selected LTE and fiber deals will receive a free National Small Business Chamber voucher worth 3,950 rand. Do business big. Call 10213 or click telkom.co.za. T's and C's apply. A dream drafts the business. Passion takes it places because you are the business. Do business big with Telkom Business.
A good afternoon to you. Coming up in your sports this hour, Cape Derby headlines midweek DStv Premiership action, and in cricket, Aiden Markram has lost out on IPL captaincy as Australia's Cummins named Sunrisers captain, and 2 South African teams still have a chance to finish in the URC top 4. More details at 3:30.
Rito leri hangala keke na misava hinkwayo ri hashambe uya vutlhari xana imani anga ku miyeta kake imani anga miyeta ka mpfumawulo wa rito ra ku ke 3 to switikweni swa vutlhari a katingiwa etimbiteni ta vutivi a sekiwa hi galaza ra vutshila loko ri mina ntombi ya mutongo n'waxombela makhutla wa madyavulari la tsutuka n'wana hi ku heta ndzi ku hluvulela xihuku ndzi ri kula u ringana na ndlopfu halala Aldrin Sampear halala.
Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
87 minutes after 3 o'clock. Good afternoon and welcome to Beyond the Headline with me, Aldrin Sampear. Thank you so much for choosing us this afternoon. We're with you from now up until 6 o'clock. So coming up on the show this afternoon, we look at the ANC special meeting that is currently underway in Boksburg. We'll be in conversation with our reporter, Samkelo Maseko, political reporter, about that particular meeting because the meeting comes ahead of the March 8 deadline that political parties have to submit their provincial as well as their national list to the IEC. And as reported over the weekend, the Integrity Committee as well as the Electoral Committee of the ANC has flagged a couple of senior members of the ANC would not be included or should not be included in the provincial as well as the national list. And one of those people is reportedly the Minister of Arts and Culture, Zizi Kodwa, and this is in relation to the allegations of state capture and the evidence that was presented at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. And remember the so-called loan that he received from EOH. So that's one of the reasons that Zizi Kodwa has been flagged and reportedly removed from the national list, which for me is a very interesting one, considering, of course, that you're going into the election and then you have such senior members of the ANC whom we've been knowing have been implicated in the State Capture Commission of Inquiry's report, because that's nothing new. It's public information. I don't know what the idea was. Maybe that the allegations would disappear, or that the evidence as well as the report will be discounted by the ANC and that the ANC won't look into the report. But as we pointed out before, let's not forget that the Integrity Committee as well as the Electoral Committee or Commission of the ANC are organs of the ANC. They are not statutory bodies. They are organs of the ANC. I wonder how far they would go to ensure that brand ANC is not tarnished by the decision, for instance, that the Electoral Committee would take, or the decision that is taken by the Integrity Committee of the ANC as they head into the election. So we'll be speaking to Samkelo Maseko in the next short while. And then also on the show this afternoon, we speak to James Hodge, who is the Chief Economist of the South African Competition Commission. And this is on the first day of public hearings of the Media and Digital Platforms Market Inquiry. And this looks at the various trends that have been picked up in the digital space and the media space as well, including artificial intelligence. And as I pointed out to Bridget, according to the statement from the Competition Commission, X, formerly known as Twitter, are refusing to participate. They're refusing to participate. And mind you that we're speaking here of a platform that carries global influence. And also my question is, does the Competition Commission, when it comes to a market inquiry, not have the powers to force a company, an organization to testify or to make submissions before it in its inquiry? Because remember that with the house, the various houses actually in the US, Twitter had been forced to appear before the committees, including the owners of Instagram as well, Meta. They have been forced to appear before the houses in the US. Is there anything, though, in our legislation that can force them to appear before the Competition Commission? And here, of course, we're not speaking about the National Assembly or the National Council of Provinces. So that's one of the conversations coming up this afternoon. And then also looking at what's happening in Chad as its interim leader confirms candidacy in this year's presidential poll. And mind you, Mohammed had taken over from his father, who had been in power for 30 years. He was the interim president, and now he says he will be contesting the elections that will be taking place in May. It comes just a couple of weeks after one of his fiercest opponents was gunned down. So what does this mean for the elections, going into the elections in Chad? But also then, are they trying to create a dynasty? Are they trying to create a dynasty? We also speak to Paul Makubane, SABC News reporter, on the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial, the trial within the trial, as the state delivers its head of arguments, and then the defense will have an opportunity to respond as they conclude that particular part of this trial within the trial, and then later on we will get a judgment. But we'll be speaking to Paul Makubane to give us an update around that. And then at 5:20, we speak to Dr. Musima Mabunda, who's the head of wellness at Discovery Health. Today is World Obesity Day. Did you know that such a day actually exists? Yeah, such a day actually exists. And according to the WHO, 1 in 8 people globally are obese, and unfortunately, it affects women more. So more women are obese compared to their male counterpart, over 40%, according to a 2016 survey, are obese compared to their male counterparts, where the percentage there is at around 11. So what is it about the anatomy of women that makes them so susceptible to obesity? And as the health department in South Africa points out, that remember that the 80-20 rule applies here, 80% nutrition and 20% fitness. So the nutrition part is very important. So that's one of the conversations coming up on the show this afternoon. 0614-104-107. You can drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032. You can tell us whatever else you would like to see on the agenda.
The only talk radio afternoon drive show that makes sense. Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear, right here on SAFM.
And by the way, we are streaming live on YouTube as well as Facebook and on X, that is refusing to testify or to give to participate in the market inquiry of the Competition Commission. So your comments, you can leave your comments there on those platforms as well, and your questions, and we'll read some of them out throughout the show. In conversation next with Samkela Maseko, SABC senior political reporter, who speaks to us about the ANC special NEC meeting that is currently underway in Boksburg. Today's meeting is aimed at finalizing the party's candidate list ahead of the IEC deadline, which is this coming Friday. But what makes it even more interesting is the fact that today's meeting is convened just after the Integrity Commission as well as the Electoral Committee of the ANC recommended that those implicated in corruption should be barred from standing for public office. Samkela Maseko now joining us on the line. Samkela, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. How tense is it going into this meeting, considering that over the weekend we saw reports that senior members of the ANC have been implicated, and reportedly senior members of the ANC told that they shouldn't be on that national as well as provincial list?
A very good afternoon to you, Aldrin, and to the listeners. Essentially, there is a bit of tension going in towards this meeting of the African National Congress, particularly in the early hours of the morning around 10, when the Alliance Secretariat is going to have their meeting, because that is essentially where the names are going to be thrashed out of those who are going to be in the ANC's list and those whom are not going to be in the ANC list, looking at some of the ANC members who are implicated in wrongdoing, some of those whom have been charged. But you can't compare those who are currently in a court of law charged for serious crimes as opposed to those who've got allegations hanging over their heads whom are not yet formally charged. Those are some of the comments that we're getting from some ANC leaders who are saying that those whom are part of the 97, some of them are not yet formally charged, and they can still form part of the list to manage politics within the governing party and also to manage the coherence of the Tripartite Alliance. Hence, you saw the Tripartite Alliance Secretariat meeting dragging where the national to national list and provincial to national lists were being thrashed out.
Just to remind us again, who are some of those people that are on the list of 97?
The likes of Zizi Godwa, the likes of Gwede Mantashe, who was allegedly cleared. You've got the likes of Cyril Ramaphosa, was also cleared. Paul Mashatile. You've got the likes of Thomas Bongo, Supra Mohamapilo, whom are part of the ANC's NEC members of recent. We've got other individuals such as Zandile Kumete, who is currently charged and going through criminal procedure and criminal charges within the courts in KwaZulu-Natal. So those are some of the names that have been on that particular list, and all of those were implicated in allegations of state capture and corruption, particularly during the era of former President Jacob Zuma. They have been flagged as well, and also the former president of the ANC, Jacob Zuma, who was also flagged within those 97 names that were sent to the ANC's Integrity Commission and who had to present themselves and present their cases. Also the likes of Bladen Zamanda as well, and the likes of Tula Singlisi, particularly coming from the allegations that came through with the likes of Mtunzim Twaba, saying that there were service providers and there were ANC members who did seek those particular bribes from Mtunzim Twaba. You've also had the likes of Enoch Godongwana, the Minister of Finance as well, who's had to present himself before this particular Integrity Commission and go through that particular interview process. The likes of Malusi Nkanyezi Kigaba as well.
Yeah. So the step aside rule of the ANC, in this particular case, does it apply at all, considering what happened heading into the ANC's elective conference?
It does apply, Aldrin, particularly when you've got an individual like Zandile Kumete who is currently charged. They are saying that those whom are formally charged and are in the courts of law, they are not eligible to represent the governing party as public representatives and to be on the list for this particular election. One wonders if they're actually going to veer off those particular guidelines to manage politics. Hence, you've seen Zandile Kumete coming out and openly campaigning for the ANC within the eThekwini region, but the ANC is saying she's not yet formally back in her responsibility as the regional chairperson of the ANC in eThekwini region, but she is in the legislature, just like you've got Bongani Bongo still in the National Assembly, because they can't effectively step aside from their elected positions as members and public representatives within Parliament, because that's a totally different statutory body as opposed to the internal working mechanisms of the African National Congress. But the guidelines do stipulate that if you are charged, you cannot be a public representative. You cannot continue to hold a position of responsibility within the ANC. You must step aside. You remember when Zandile Kumete was elected and when Mandla Msibi was elected in Mpumalanga, they then took a resolution that when you are formally charged, you cannot even contest anymore. Hence, Danny Msiza in Limpopo could no longer contest.
Just quickly, finally, Samkelo, what are some of the pundits saying, and possibly even from your own observation as well, what this cleaning up process for the ANC means going into the election? Because on one end, some people would perceive it as this is the ANC trying to clean up, but on the other end as well is that senior ANC members are implicated. What does it mean for the party's campaign?
It essentially means, Alden, the ANC has to mitigate through politics of the governing party and the alliance, but also mitigate through public perception and how it manages how people will perceive it to have tainted individuals within their list. You imagine people like Malusi Kigaba, imagine people like Dr. Salim Kiza is not yet formally charged, but he has been tainted by issues of digital vibes. But you've also seen him leading priority number 3 of the African National Congress. But there is an issue of, I'm going to bring in Mr. Enoch Godongwana. He's in front of me. I'm going to try him, Elton. Let me put it.
Okay, go ahead.
So that the viewers can hear for themselves. Mr. Kodongwan, what number are you on that list? Are you coming back?
I don't even know. I've not seen the list.
You've not seen the list?
I don't see the list.
So, Mr. Kodongwan, what happens to those whom are charged? Can they still be part of your representatives, or they're not going to feature?
No, the ones that are charged are a different thing. But the ones that are allegations, that's a different story. Because an allegation on its own is not insufficient. I just had an allegation from Ndwaba recently. What does that mean? I should have been taken out as well. And then he went to court and proved that it was lying. So we can't do that to people. If you are charged, you step aside. That's the rule. But for people who are not charged, please forgive us.
So did you go for the interview process?
Yes, I did.
How did you fare?
No. I'm an experienced man.
So you are going back to Parliament?
I don't know.
When are you heading over the rail to your deputy?
Mind you, no, that's not my decision. It's about my pay grade.
What do you want to say? You can speak freely.
What?
SAFM is a free space. You can speak freely.
About what?
How you want to see the list pan out? How can society read into it?
Look, my view is that at least there must be a proportional representation of young people. a professional representation of young people in the list. Southern society is becoming more younger and younger. Then that democratic representation will be important.
Thank you very much. That was Mr. Enoch Kotuwan. I had to ambush him there. He's saying that you cannot compare those who are charged and those whom have allegations hanging over their heads, saying that there is a clear distinction between the two. Those whom are formally charged, like Bongani Pongo, like Zandile Kumete, those are automatically out. Those who've got allegations over them, that's a separate issue that the ANC, NEC, and the Alliance Secretariat has to apply its mind on.
Thank you so much for your time. Well done there, Samkelo Maseko there, ambushing the Minister of Finance. And also remember that the Minister of Finance was actually implicated in sexual harassment charges relating to an incident that apparently happened at Kruger National Park or happened in Mpumalanga. And the person who laid the charge against the Finance Minister later on dropped the charges against him. And I guess that's the reason why the Integrity Committee of the ANC would have cleared him that he is free to be on the list of the ANC because he has no other pending charges against him. 0614-107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086 000 2032.
For years, Outsurance has been saying they'll save you money on your car insurance, or you can ask for 500 Rand or 1,500 Rand cash if they don't. Here's Fundi, 46 from Brackenfell.
I was not happy with what I was paying. I heard about the 500 Rand from Outsurance, but they give me lesser amount for my car. I'm paying 523 Rand on my 2013 Hyundai iX35.
So here's how it works. SMS out to 30754. We'll give you a no-obligation car insurance quote. If the quote is less than you're currently paying, you'll end up saving money on your car insurance every month. And if it's more than you're currently paying, you can ask for 500 Rand. And if you've been with the same insurer and claim free for 3 years or more, tell us you want 1,500 Rand.
Give Outsurance a call. It's a win-win. You can't lose.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's, and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
Fly better to your next holiday. Book your flights with Emirates to a holiday in Dubai, London, Istanbul, or Paris. Look forward to delicious regionally inspired cuisine, enjoy free-flowing premium drinks, and relax to your favorite movies on the way. Because it's not just about the destination, it's how you get there. This year, fly Emirates. Fly better.
Third-placed VfB Stuttgart understand that only victory will get them close to the top two teams on the table. Whereas Union Berlin have a mammoth task to cause an upset away from home. Who will dictate terms at the MHP Arena? This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Experience the German style of the game. VfB Stuttgart FC versus FC Union Berlin on Friday, 8 March at 9:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
Good afternoon, Aldrin and the team and the listeners. I mean, honestly speaking, Aldrin, who in the ANC is not implicated somehow on some wrongdoing? Really? Who? I mean, from the number one, Phala to Minister of Police. Remember the scandal of a rental monies in Durban that led him to be fired. I mean, who in the ANC is not implicated somehow? They must just put all of them back. They must go to election with all those people. It will make our life easy to vote them out. Thank you.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
Yeah, and someone was actually saying to me, unfortunately for the ANC, is that they've also lost the benefit of doubt that you'd ordinarily get from the public because of the number of people that are implicated and the continuous cases of corruption that we report on. But it's not every single person in the ANC that has been implicated in corruption. We're in conversation next with Nixon Katembo, African Affairs commentator, and also he works for Channel Africa. Chad's interim president, Mohamed Idris Deby, announced over the weekend that he will run in the country's long-awaited presidential election that is due to take place in May this year. Following his announcement, Deby has been endorsed by a coalition of more than 220 political parties and associations. However, though, his candidacy confirmation is clouded by the death of one of his main opponents, who was killed recently in a military operation in the capital, Jamina. For more on this, we speak to Nixon Katembo. Nixon, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Good afternoon, Aldrin, and good afternoon to SFM listeners.
Was it always expected that Idris will say, or Mohammed will say, that I'll put my hand up for the elections, considering that he was acting after the death of his father?
Yes, it is expected, and the political machinations around this transitional period indicate that he was in to run for the elections, and the way in which he has acted to try to eliminate the political opposition, and you've just mentioned about the opposition leader who was recently killed, but also in the process of this transitional government, you remember that the Prime Minister, who was then a former opposition leader, was invited to form a government while he was in exile in Congo Brazzaville. This is on an initiation, so that the government held talks with the opposition, mediated by DRC President Felix Tshisekedi. And upon that mediation, the opposition leader went back to Chad and got appointed as a prime minister. So the remaining opposition leader now has been killed among those who are popular. It means he kind of eliminated sort of any stumbling block that could stop him from winning these elections.
And here's my question on that basis as well, because Yaya is actually the president's cousin. Are they trying to run a dynasty here?
Well, if you look at many of these former French colonies, that has been sort of the indication. You look at from Gabon to Congo Brazzaville to Cameroon, now to Chad, and even when had the Malian not kicked the French out, or the Niger kicked the French out, that could have replicated itself. So, by all indication, it is a kind of a dynasty, but also the circumstances under which the Idris Deby, the father, was killed. It has now come to light through some of investigation. Intelligence report in the French that the French was involved in killing the father, and then therefore took the son to make sure that he held fort and preserve a French interest in Chad. And remember, this is an oil-producing country. The only remaining bastion of French influence at the moment in the Sahel, together with Mauritania. So one expected that they are going to make sure that he ran the country based on a precept of how the father was killed. And you recall that the Idris Deby, the father, was killed after making a speech in the French Parliament saying that he's not going to allow himself any longer to be a puppet of a French interest in Africa, because at the time Chad and the Central African Republic was having a kind of tussles along the borders, and then the French wanted at the time to deal with the Russian influence in the Central African Republic using Chad. something which Idris Deby refused, and therefore to led to his killing. So it is clear that a dynasty has been set, but on the whims of France.
Thank you so much for your time. Nixon Katembo there, joining us on the developments that are taking place in Chad. It's a minute after 3:30. Time for the news headlines.
Good afternoon. In the headlines, Gauteng police say they are investigating the shooting incident that occurred in Eldorado Park Extension 4 in the south of Johannesburg that claimed the lives of 2 people in their 20s. The shooting happened on Saturday, but reports of the incident are only now coming to light. The South African National Editors Forum has made an appeal to the country's competition authorities to ensure fair compensation and sharing of data between local media houses and global digital platforms. And police in the Western Cape have requested assistance from the public after a 3-year-old boy went missing in Kayamandi in Stellenbosch yesterday. I'll have details on these and other stories at 4.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Let's see what's happening on the roads with Rob Byrne. Good afternoon, Rob.
Thanks, Aldrin. Afternoon. There's quite an unusual delay today on the R21 between Pretoria and the airport down at OR Tambo. It's some roadworks just past the Olifantsfontein Road exit, but you're going to pick up quite a queue passing Clayville as you come through to Tembisa. So if you're leaving Pretoria, you've got a flight to connect with. Better to know about that than hit the queue and panic. There's a bit of traffic on the Mike 1 going north up towards Corlett Drive today as well. A couple of issues around the Greater Durban area. One is a breakdown at Spaghetti Junction. The N2 going south is under pressure. Because, of course, it is a roadwork zone as well. So queues already from in under road. Taxi is overturned on the N3 around Cliffdale. That's on your way to Pietermaritzburg. That's a heavy backlog getting back to sort of Key Ridge area up to Cliffdale on your way towards that scene. If you're Pietermaritzburg bound, having left Durban, that's quite heavy. Looks like maybe just one lane open to get past. Cape Town, just watch for some surface water and some flooding. There's been a bit of rain over the last couple of hours. Some of it like a sort of cloudburst formation, particularly Tableview Parklands. Numerous reports coming in of roads that have been flooded out that side. Should drain off quickly, but just take it easy. Keep eyes on the road ahead today. Hasn't been raining Cape Town for a while. The N2, Nelson Mandela Boulevard, heavy to Hospital Bend, and then you're going to sit in some really heavy stuff on the M3. It's already queuing as far as Newlands Drive, Rhodes Drive exit. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Duming Kapele.
Good afternoon to me.
Hi, Aldrin.
What's happening in the world of rugby?
So much is happening. Those results coming in thick and fast from the United Rugby Championships. And Stormers head coach John Dobson says that this past weekend's defeat to the Bulls cost his side in their bid for a home playoff. But the reality is a top 4 finish in the URC is still very much possible. There was a lot of shift in the log after the weekend's results, and specifically looking at South African teams. Stormers dropped from 5th to 9th, meaning they out of both playoff and Investec Championship Cup qualifications. And then when it comes to the Bulls, they've established themselves as the SA flag bearers in the competition this season. They second. The Lions, on the other hand, are now just 3 points behind the top 8 bracket, and Sharks pitted down at the bottom, 16th. In football, the derby between Cape Town City and Stellenbosch FC is the headline fixture of midweek DStv Premiership action. Stellies beat the Citizens 1-0 when the teams met in the league earlier this year. And a win or a draw will see Steve Barker's side extend their unbeaten run in this fixture to 7 league matches. Meanwhile, Kaizer Chiefs head coach Kevin Johnson has defended his ace midfielder Nkosi Ngobo against insinuations that he might be carrying extra weight that makes it difficult for him to perform at his best. Johnson was asked about Ngobo's fitness and Chiefs' general lack of intensity and cohesive play this year after playing to a 3rd successive goalless draw in 3 competitive games in 2024 in the league stalemate against the Morocco Swallows on Saturday. Now 6th place Amakosi failing to find the back of the net at FNB Stadium against the Birds in 14th place, and with well-documented off-field problems took them past 300 minutes without a goal in the restart from the 7-week break for the Africa Cup of Nations. Elsewhere, Arsenal head into tonight's match against Sheffield United, looking to extend their 6-match winning run in the league. Arsenal sit third in the league table, 5 points behind leaders Liverpool, and they're on a winning run where they have scored 25 goals. Manager Mikel Arteta knows that his free-scoring Arsenal side could rely on a goal difference if they are to win the Premier League this season. And despite heading into the weekend 2 points off top of the table in third, the Gunners are now boasting the best goal difference in the league.
Yes, for sure. It's an important element there. First of all, you have to earn the right to win the games, and then we want to be ruthless and efficient in front of goal, and I think lately we've been really good.
In cricket, Sunrisers Hyderabad have named Australia's skipper Pat Cummins as the captain for the 2024 season. Cummins returns to the IPL after a season's absence, having skipped the tournament in 2023 to manage a heavy international schedule. Now, the 30-year-old was signed by Hyderabad in the players' auction in December for $2.46 million and briefly held the record for most expensive player in IPL history before being overtaken by Mitchell Starc. Now Cummins comes in to replace Aiden Markram as captain. And ending things off with tennis, Carlos Alcaraz and Rafa Nadal warmed up for the ATP Indian Wells Masters yesterday with a lively exhibition at Las Vegas, where Alcaraz won 3-6, 6-4 and 14-12, and the contest was live streamed on Netflix. Nadal missed most of last year with a hip injury sustained at the Australian Open, and this one was just a chance for both Spanish stars to test their fitness. With that said, it is a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour for SAFM Sport. I'm Dumin Kabel.
Introducing a collection of Audi Black and Urban Special Edition models crafted for the bold and curated for the progressive. From the sporty Audi S3 and elegant A4 to the distinctive Q2 and Q3, each vehicle has been created to be an extension of your identity. Style, design, comfort, and technology is yours to own with a guaranteed future value and a competitive monthly installment through Audi Financial Services. Visit audi.co.za to discover more.
The top flight outfits are adamant that they are the great masters of the game. But the junior teams refuse to shake and break. The moments of upset are back again in the battle of 32 teams. This is the Cup of Dreams, the Nedbank Cup. Experience it live on SABC TV channels and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
Our Formula One correspondent, Prince Ndiweni, Christian Horner's story. The decision to clear him initially, was that done a little bit hastily, do you feel? Or was all the evidence looked at?
It being quick was in line with stance that Red Bull and their legal team seem to take, which is that innocent until proven guilty, and that Christian Horner is more likely than not innocent. Right. However, in hindsight, we now have the details of the chat and what we're assuming is the actual nature of the conversation in the WhatsApp chat. Having that in hindsight makes us think that investigation was rather quick then, wasn't it? If this is the nature of the allegation, right. And if there's this much to be looked into and investigated.
Top Sport on SAFM.
Good afternoon. This is your captain speaking with just a little flight information. We're flying at an altitude of 37,000 feet and our airspeed is 400 miles an hour.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to BTH Airline. I'm your co-pilot, Aldrin Sampear, and I'm with you from 3 to 6, flying you through the turbulent airwaves. But the landing will be smooth.
So just sit back and relax and enjoy the rest of the flight.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
0614-104-107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032. When we come back, we're in conversation with James Hodge, who is the chief economist at the South African Competition Commission, as we look at the media and digital platforms market inquiry. And then at the 10 to 4, we speak to Pearl Makubani, SABC News reporter, on the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial, as we look at the trial within a trial.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Hi, Aldrin. How can the ANC have integrity committee while the ANC, the majority of those who we know, don't have integrity? So who is part of the integrity committee? If almost, or if not all, ANC politicians don't have integrity, from the president going downwards, no one with integrity. How? Yeah, ne?
Well, the Integrity Committee of the ANC is chaired by Reverend Frank Chikani, and then the deputy chairperson is Sophie de Bruyn. If you remember Sophie de Bruyn, one of the stalwarts who were part of the 1956 march to the Union buildings. That was the Women's March that has culminated into what we celebrate here in South Africa as Women's Day. So yeah, Reverend Frank Chikani, the chairperson, and then deputy chairperson Sophie de Bruyn, but then you also have some NEC members that are part of the committee.
Hi, Aldrin, it's Doomsy from Cape Town. The biggest challenge with these online platforms is that they are not registered to operate. There is no Facebook office here in South Africa. I doubt if there is, or an X office. As such, it is nearly impossible to enforce any laws or compel them to comply with any particular law. The only thing you can just use influence or influences the state, maybe, I don't know, but it's very difficult. Most of the online advertising goes untaxed because Facebook and Google are dominating that space, and they don't even have a bank account in South Africa.
Well, with that said, we're actually in conversation now with James Hodge, who is a chief economist at the South African Competition Commission. He also chairs the Media and Digital Platforms Market Inquiry, which started today. So today marking the first day of the public hearings of the Media and Digital Platforms Market Inquiry, spearheaded by the Competition Commission. The inquiry will, among other things, focus on examining the distribution of media content on South Africa's digital platforms, and will also investigate if there are any market features that may adversely affect competition or undermine the purpose of the Competition Act, and to comprehensively remedy those features. James Hodge is now joining us on the line. James, good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Pleasure.
James, I want to start off here before we look into the inquiry itself. Was there any reason given by X, formerly known as Twitter, why they do not want to participate?
Look, X has given us submissions. They indicated that they didn't feel it necessary to come, given the kind of areas we wish to cover, and that they've made submissions on these points. I think our view is that discussion and debate is the purpose of a public hearing. Getting a submission just gets a one-side view of what their perspective is. But it's important we debate that. And it's important, certainly in South Africa, and in inquiries of this nature, and particularly this one around media and platforms that the public use daily, is that they also get to hear and participate in that process. So for accountability and transparency. I mean, other platforms don't have an issue, and the press here. And what it also facilitates is a debate. Topics might be raised by one stakeholder and picked up by another, or addressed by a third in terms of the implications. So that's why I think participation is a different thing from making submissions, and that's why it's important.
So is there anything that the Competition Commission will be doing to, I don't know, if you do have such powers, to force X Corp to participate in these hearings? And I see that you're making a call to the public to ask them whether they would like to hear, whether they think X Corp should be participating and what questions they have for them of relevance to the inquiry scope.
Yeah, so look, I mean, with any legislation come powers, but it's a sad day we have to resort to summoning people to public hearing. I mean, this should be something where it is of a public nature and debated in a public forum. I mean, as we indicated, X's platform is based on public conversation and engagement and debate. So let's have that. I mean, the reason I think the public and the media, we wanted them to express their view is it's not just us who are affected in gathering information, but they are too. They use these platforms. The media say they are affected by these platforms. And so let's have that discussion in a transparent manner where the public can hear what X has to say and evaluate in their own head their thoughts about this interaction between the platforms and the media.
So what does this mean? Does it mean that the Competition Commission will force X to participate?
I think we haven't assessed our options fully at the moment, but certainly we think that they should be coming, and that's why we also want to hear from the public. There may be options open to us, but let's see how this unfolds.
Yeah, because and here's the thing about X specifically is that X is a major platform. I think close to around 4 million people, South Africans that are subscribers and active on X. And we also know that X has the ability to sway public opinion and also influence decisions that are made by corporates. And we know the role that it also plays when it comes to the elections, and we're going into an election year as well. I think it's important that they participate, and if the Competition Commission has the powers to subpoena them, then I think it should.
Oh, look, an inquiry is an evidence-based assessment. We have to explore. And so it's important we engage with all parties around the issues. Because certainly on an evidence-based assessment, maybe that certain positions make sense, maybe some less so, but we can't do that unless we are able to engage and make those findings.
Yeah.
But all of these platforms are important. They play different roles in society. As you rightly point out, X has its own position, and those are the things we wish to explore, because the relationship of, say, the media with X is probably different to the media with Google or Facebook or So it's understanding those and getting that nuance, I think, is important.
Yeah. What is it that the Competition Commission has picked up, or maybe even complaints that the Competition Commission has received, that has triggered this inquiry?
Well, look, I think generally, and the point was made this morning by Sanef, there are a lot of developments globally questioning this relationship. And so it is of importance. Media industry, if it is financially unsustainable, has serious consequences for South Africa. And those points were well made this morning about how, if newsrooms get depleted, certain stories are not heard. People are not heard. And that undermines the democracy and the Constitution. So it is a very important area, and that's why we've decided to launch it. But as I indicated, in terms of our inquiry process, we need to make findings and understand this. And it is a very complex area. And that's why, part of the public hearing process is also to educate the public, to build its understanding so it too can engage in the discussion and debate, which is what the news media does as well, and what we sometimes call public interest media. So hearing and the public hearing part has both an inquisitorial dimension and a debate and discussion, but it has a very important educational. And especially, I think even for myself and probably others, there are parts of this technology which we don't fully understand, such as AI and some of the ad tech, which is incredibly complex. So to hear from the players in that and get their understanding, get their perspective is essential if we're going to make good findings in terms of this important area.
Okay, how long is the inquiry set to run, and by when do you think you'll better finalize the report, including the recommendations as well?
So the inquiry process, we start with a bit of information and evidence gathering, which we've done. We then go into public hearings, and then we continue evidence gathering. That is something we sustain throughout. We're aiming to put out a provisional report later this year, and then after that to take comments and submissions and try and finalize it early next year. So that is certainly the objective that we would like to achieve, given its importance.
Thank you so much for your time. James Hodge is a chief economist at the South African Competition Commission, and he also chairs the Media and Digital Platforms Market Inquiry.
Get South Africa's best adventure SUV. The new Ford Everest Sport 2-litre auto bi-turbo 4x2, now from only $14,499 per month with no deposit. With 20-inch alloy wheels and black exterior accents. Get the new Ford Everest Sport at your nearest Ford dealer today. T&Cs apply.
The Eagles understand how crucial maximum points are as they rapidly want to climb up the ladder of the Premier League.
Jordan whips in once more. Richards at the back post! Carissa Richards has broken the deadlock at Selhurst Park!
But the Hatters know that they need something magical to escape from danger.
Forward run from Chong, deflection of Bene's header, and the Hatters lead. What a noise from the away end, the Kop end is stuck.
Experience the Premier League encounter between Crystal Palace FC and Luton Town FC on Saturday 9 March at 4 p.m. live on S3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Like for instance, point that was raised by another voice note. It says that the prosecutor said the bail must be 5,000. The defense said 4,000. What did the magistrate say?
Yes.
What did the magistrate say?
10,000.
Why did the magistrate say 10,000?
That is still unfair.
Wait, Tommy, pendulum buzo. Answer the question.
Few inches later.
Wait, Tommy, pendulum buzo.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
I don't know.
Good afternoon, Adrian, and good afternoon to the listeners. We are speaking to Kabazela in Teben. Adrian, this term allegation, which is alleged, I think it's going to give us a problem as South Africans, because people do things and then they say, no, it's alleged. Advocate Bongo went out and used the government credit card and buy KFC for 5,000 rand. Gwete Mantashe has his home being renovated by controversial companies. Zikoda is being given in such an amount of money. Then it turns out to be a loan. All those things are being covered up as allegation. No. People must come out clearly, and then we should relook at this word allegations. Please. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Aldrin Sampear and your beautiful, hard-working team behind you. My name is Mpepumpereni from Limpopo Mukumbane village. Aldrin, I have a problem of number of political parties in our country. How can a country of 60 million people have more than 150 presidential candidates? A country like Nigeria with more than 200 million people have less than 7 candidates. Another country, America, have less than 3 presidential candidates. This, to me, simply means politics is the best way of making money, not to serve poor people on the ground. Stealing people's money always be an order of the day. without any consequences. Thank you so much. Mpepho Mpireni, Limpopo Mkumbane Village. Nda.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen. Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
5 minutes now before 4 o'clock. In conversation next with Pearl Makubani, SABC News reporter. So closing arguments in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial within a trial have been adjourned until Wednesday. This as the defense counsel, Thulani Mngomezulu, who is now representing accused number 1, Muzi Sibia, needs to consult with other witnesses. Sibia and 4 others are on a trial at the High Court in Pretoria for the murder of Bafana captain, who was shot and killed in 2014. The defense is challenging the admissibility of the confession statements allegedly made by accused 1 as well as accused number 2. Pearl, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. Well, the Senzo Meyiwa trial is just the trial that keeps on giving, because now the opposition is calling for a reopening of the trial within a trial. And then on the other hand as well, Ramusipila's brief has come to an end.
Yeah, good afternoon, Aldrin. Well, we thought that today we would commence with the closing argument as expected. However, Thulani Mngomezulu, who came into the proceedings at the beginning of the trial, within the trial, to assist Ramusipili, now informed the court that the Legal Aid Board will not pay for his services since he commenced with this trial within the trial. However, the Sibia family made contact with him saying that they still need his services and therefore they will fit the bill. However, now, when we're ready to proceed, because he had been part of the initial beginning of this trial within the trial, and he was supposed to have had his head of argument ready. He says that Muzi Sibia now wants to call witnesses, who happen to be 3 witnesses, and they're all police officers. We're told that these witnesses are part of the defense list to be called during the main trial, but it is yet to be seen as to what is their role with regards to the taking of confession statements and the presence of them during the alleged assaults that happened when accused 1 and 2 were arrested.
So what happens now until Wednesday?
Well, we just adjourned. He's supposed to consult with those police officers and just tell them that they need to be ready to be called should the judge grant them permission to reopen the case. He said he's consulted with 2 of them and just needs to consult with 1 and continue with his heads of argument, which he said he paused when he found out that he will no longer be paid. But he says that the judge just said gave him Wednesday only just to go over everything and prepare everything, and come Wednesday, then we should be able to proceed and know for sure whether this trial within the trial will be reopened or we're just going to close it with arguments.
So do we expect that decision to be made on Wednesday around the reopening of the trial, or is there still going to be hearings before that decision is taken?
Well, we expect the decision to be made, because if he hasn't done that within the prescribed time, I know that Judge Ratamukhatleng was reluctant in granting another postponement, but he once again reiterated that he doesn't want to be seen as to be against the defense or something like that. So he will, go ahead and grant them this opportunity, this despite the state saying that they did not see the need for these witnesses to be called, as none of their names were mentioned during the trial within the trial, so they don't see what purpose they will serve. But Rata just said he wanted to be fair and give everyone a chance to present the case accordingly. So what if Mngomezulu does have all the things he needs and has done significant consultation with these witnesses and has his heads of argument ready, we should be able to proceed and have a clear indication of what's going to transpire.
Thank you so much for your time. That is a SABC News reporter there, Pearl Makubani, giving us the latest on the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial that continues in the High Court in Pretoria. And as you just heard now, an application to have the trial within a trial reopened because of new submissions that the defense wants to make. This year will mark 10 years since Senzo Meyiwa was gunned down. 10 years since Senzo Meyiwa was gunned down. And it doesn't seem as though that by the time that we reach the 10th year anniversary of his death, that there will be an outcome in this trial. 0614104107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. Our studio line is 086 000 20332. It is 4 o'clock. It's time for the news.
independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
In our top stories, police probe Eldorado Park shooting and SENEF seeks fair compensation for local media. Good afternoon. Gauteng police say they are investigating the shooting incident that occurred in Eldorado Park Extension 4 in the south of Johannesburg that claimed the lives of 2 people in their 20s. The shooting happened on Saturday, but reports of the incident are only now coming to light. There was also a shooting in the Rivoli area at the weekend, which claimed the lives of 3 people. The area has been suffering with gun violence for some time now. Police spokesperson Dimakatso Nebuhulwi.
No one is arrested and the motive of the shooting is unknown at this stage. A team of investigators has been activated to investigate the murderers and follow up on any leads that they receive. Investigations continue.
The South African National Editors Forum has made an appeal to the country's competition authorities to ensure fair compensation and sharing of data between local media houses and global digital platforms. SENEF took part in the Competition Commission's Media and Digital Platforms Market Inquiry in Pretoria. SENEF, alongside the United Nations, educational, scientific and cultural organizations, made oral presentations to the inquiry. Editors Forum Chairperson Bungalwa.
The fair compensation to us should be based on the value that the platforms derive from the content. And also we believe that small and local community media organizations should be enabled to participate and benefit from these systems. But the reality is that we don't know what that value is because the tech companies do not provide that information.
Police in the Western Cape have requested assistance from the public after a 3-year-old boy went missing in Kayamandi in Stellenbosch yesterday. Police spokesperson Wesley Twig says Enzo Mtsoweni was playing outside his home before his disappearance.
According to reports, the child was playing outside his home in 8th Avenue, Kayamandi, between 3 in the afternoon and 7 in the evening. When his father went out to look for him, he was nowhere to be found. At the time of his disappearance, he was wearing a long-sleeve blue top, cargo pants and blue Batman sandals.
Angry residents of Mkhuhlu near Hazyview in Mpumalanga are calling on the Minister of Justice, Ronald Lamola, to intervene in the matter of a pastor who's alleged to have raped a minor. The pastor was released on bail. The residents say the accused was released without the knowledge of the family and the community. The frustrated residents further allege that the accused was set to make a formal bail application on the 27th of March, but he was released earlier than that. And finally, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights says he's deeply concerned that the war in Gaza could spill over across the Middle East. Speaking in Geneva, Volker Turk said the conflict was already creating a dangerous regional situation.
The war in Gaza has already generated dangerous spillover in neighboring countries, and I'm deeply concerned that in this powder keg, any spark could lead to a much broader conflagration. This would have implications for every country in the Middle East and many beyond it.
Recapping the top story, Gauteng police say they are investigating the shooting incident that occurred in Eldorado Park Extension 4 in the south of Johannesburg that claimed the lives of 2 people in their 20s. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
And coming up in your sports this hour, Mamelodi Sundowns sets sights on FIFA Club World Cup. Bangladesh have opted to bowl in first T20 against Sri Lanka, and Rublev's ranking points and prize money have been reinstated. I'll have more on this and other sports stories at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Stays very heavy on Gauteng's R21. This is the airport highway leaving Pretoria en route for flight connections perhaps at OR Tambo. There's a stationary truck just after Olifantsfontein, so it's between Olifantsfontein Road and the Engen services, and the traffic queue is enormous. It's back almost halfway towards St George's Hotel. 3 lanes are currently blocked by that stationary truck, so maybe it's jackknifed or got itself in trouble. The Mike 1 parked out up to Melrose. That is looking quite heavy. The news not great from Durban for motorists wanting to go to Pietermaritzburg. The collision scene at Cliffdale is being cleared, but it's been replaced by a stationary truck. So that heavy backlog stays heavy from Key Ridge on your way to Cliffdale, direction Pietermaritzburg. Very, very substantial backlog of traffic in that area. A lot of trucks are caught up as well. Cape Town Kiel-Basson Drive, a crash between Bosmansdam Road and the Burgundy Estate causing backlogs, and the N2 out of Cape Town Central, fairly heavy. Nelson Mandela Boulevard to Hospital Bend, and then all the way you sit in traffic to Bunga Avenue in front of Langa. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
And we will buy 500 cars, and we will buy 500 more. Just to be the one who buys your car, will come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far. This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
We are saying to JP Smith, you are not the law. You are simply an MMC. And if everybody in the Western Cape is afraid of you, we're not afraid of him. He's not a goddess of South Africa. He's not God. Everybody in the Western Cape, in the DA and so on, when he speaks, it's like it's God or Gabriel speaking. He's not Gabriel.
Gabriel, you've gone too far. Gabriel, you've gone too far, and you should hang your head in shame. For these moons I cannot stay. You've gone too far. You broke my heart. You've gone too far.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
87 minutes after 4 o'clock, coming up on the show in this hour, we speak to political parties following the reports in the weekend newspapers, the Sunday Times to be specific, on the Speaker of the National Assembly allegedly receiving bribes receiving bribes running into the millions. This is according to the report that was that was reported on yesterday by the Sunday Times, that says that they've learned of a high-level investigation into accusations that Mapisa Nqakula solicited and was paid up to 2.3 million rand in cash delivered in bags by defense industry businesswoman Nombasa Ntondwa Ndlovu, the wife of a general in the SANDF's military health service. According to the report, Ntondwa Ndlovu has deposed an affidavit into the investigating directorate's investigation about these allegations that have been leveled against Nosiviwe Mapisa Nqakula. However, in the paper it says that the National Assembly Speaker was approached and she's denying the allegations, but also says that the ID hasn't contacted her for any questions relating to this ongoing investigation. But Ntondwa Ndlovu said that in her affidavit there were several venues where the money was handed over to Mapisa Nqakula, and they would use sometimes in the transfers they would use code names such as Wigs, Impepo, Nesnef, Snuff, as some of the code names that are being used when the money is being transferred to Nosiviwe Mapisa Nqakula. So some political parties say that action must be taken against her. So we'll be speaking to a number of political parties this afternoon, including the Democratic Alliance, the EFF, ATM, as well as the IFP. We're just waiting on the ANC to confirm if they are available to speak to us on these allegations and what they believe should happen now that these allegations have come to light and have been reported on in the papers, in the Sunday papers. And then at 4:45, we in conversation with Davinel, Director of Out LGBT Wellbeing, and also Andrew Fleming, HIV Provincial Advisor of the US Consulate, who will be joining us at 4:45. 0614-1041 07, and can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. Our studio line is 086 000 2032.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
10 past 4. 10 past 4. Ba, ba.
This is Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
Well, 4:10. Let's take your voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Hi, Aldrin. And the SAFM listener, you know this thing of Senzo Meyiwa, you know it had very bad whereby like even you think if maybe it was your brother, you know, what are you going to, how you gonna react? And also it's like this, it seems like the government it just entertain ourselves for themselves with this one. Can't they just having a timeline for this case of Senzo so that his mom, while she's still alive, she can like just have a peace where she is.
Aldrin, good afternoon to you and your team. This is Flores from the Western Cape. Aldrin, now that the whistleblower has a name and a face with regards to Nosiwa, when she was still Minister of Defense. Yeah, and it's quite difficult really to prove that she did accept bribes, because if you listen to the tapes and conversations that are available, they talk in riddles, almost like in code names, and weaves gets used quite a bit. So it's going to be very difficult to prove that she indeed took a bribe. Yeah, even though there's a whistleblower who said that, yeah, she gave her money. That's going to be interesting. Have a good show. Bye.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
And we stay with that story in relation to what the Sunday Times reported over the weekend, that the Speaker of the National Assembly, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, has been implicated in corruption scandal during her tenure as the Minister of Defence. An affidavit named the Speaker of Parliament and the business entities involved that had paid her up to 2.3 million rand between November 2016 and July 2019. Opposition parties in Parliament have reacted to voice their concerns regarding this development that has been exposed in the Sunday Times. We start off with Siviwe Gwarube, who is a member of Parliament and the Chief Whip of the Democratic Alliance. Siviwe, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. I understand that the Democratic Alliance has already lodged a complaint.
Good afternoon, Aldrin, and good afternoon to your listeners. Yes, I mean, the revelations that came to light via the Sunday Times yesterday are very serious in nature. Considering the fact that there are allegations that the Speaker during her tenure as the Minister of Defence may have received over 2 million rand in bribes, is something that is quite serious, because we are of the view that the head of the legislative arm in our country should be beyond reproach, and we can't have a scenario or a situation where she has untested allegations that are hanging over her head, and we continue as if, as business as usual. And that is why it's now important that while there is the criminal investigation that is going on, and we look forward to the conclusion of that, Aldrin, because there are murmurs that somehow this criminal investigation has been ongoing and it's been completed, but there has been political pressure to kind of to suppress it. And so we are looking forward to hearing what the NPA will do and say with regards to that investigation. But it does not negate that Parliament has a responsibility, because its own head of institution is now suspected of these grave allegations. And so we must do our own investigation and to test whether or not this is somebody who is suited to be able to lead the institution. Because if she is not, then we've got to move with impeachment proceedings.
Wouldn't you prefer that the criminal investigation be concluded first, and perhaps maybe if the idea appears before Parliament, there could be questions that are asked in relation to that investigation?
The concern here, Aldrin, is that, as I said, the head of this institution and the head of parliament, which the Speaker of the National Assembly is, should not be somebody who is suspected of these kind of allegations. I think it does more harm than good in terms of really seeing that a lot of South Africans have a huge trust deficit between Parliament and themselves, and we are of the view that we can't simply sit back and not do our own due diligence, because these two processes are very separate. What the NPA will do and what Parliament ought to do is very, very different. And so even how the investigation by the Ethics Committee will be conducted will be different. And so that is why we can't simply wait. And the notion that we ought to just simply wait for the outcome of that investigation suggests that Parliament should be led in its process by another process. And we are of the view that it needs to be nipped in the bud, and there are processes that Parliament has at its disposal. Once we have conducted that investigation, then we need to ask ourselves whether or not we can have a head of institution that is suspected of these allegations and that could potentially be involved and embroiled in bribery allegations.
Well, this allegation came out back in 2021 already, and the UDM leader Bantu Holomisa had spoken about that, and we were told that Parliament's Joint Standing Committee on Defence has appointed a task team to investigate the allegations against the former minister. What came out of that?
So we know that from our members on the committee that the matter was simply then we didn't continue as they were looking into it, because they were told that there wasn't any prima facie evidence to suggest that there are any truth to these allegations. But of course now we are in a very different position than we were back in 2021, because now there is the emergence of a deposed affidavit which has apparently evidence that is attached to it, which we are told that the NPA is in possession of. We are also told that the ID is really at an advanced stage of this investigation. And so the set of circumstances now, Aldrin, is far more different than it was in 2021, and that's why we don't even think that this now belongs in the Defense Committee. This now must go to the Ethics Committee, and we must now test whether or not even having the Speaker preside over this role is in fact something that should happen. And this is not, despite the fact that we are wrapping down and wrapping up the term of Parliament, I think it's important, because it's important that we still follow the process. The two judges that were impeached, Aldrin, while the matter dragged on for 15 years, it was an important one for precedent setting. And even with this one, we think that even if the term has ended, impeaching a speaker that is found to be guilty should be something that we do, so that we know in future that these are processes that exist and these are levers in our democracy that exist, because it's an important part of holding people accountable.
Thank you so much for your time. That is Siviwe Kwarupe, who is a member of Parliament and also the Chief Whip of the Democratic Alliance in Parliament. Let's now listen to what Veronica Mente has to say. She is a member of Parliament as well and the National Chairperson of the EFF. Veronica, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. So the EFF also calling for the immediate removal of Mapisa Nqakula. Do you think that is possible at all? Once again, looking into that back in 2021 already, Bantu Holomisa had made these allegations.
Good afternoon, Aldrin, and thank you very much for having us. Yes, indeed, it is very much possible. Because back in 2021, knowing very well how the ANC operate and the abuse of power in terms of using majority to vote any matter for it to come to the surface. But now, because of all the information surrounding this particular case and now the revelations that we've seen on the media, as well as what is alleged to be in the hands of the Independent Directorate as well as the NPA. Parliament has to really investigate this matter. So just like Kwahubo was saying, the matter now is no longer a matter of a joint standing committee in terms of investigation. It's a matter that affects a code of conduct. It's a matter that abuses the powers and the privileges that members of Parliament have. And according to those same Powers and Privileges Act, it doesn't allow any member of Parliament to abuse their power in any way possible, or especially where bribes are concerned, and especially where arranging issues of tender and using information and the power of your office to choose who is supposed to get a tender and on what basis, especially where there's going to be a monetary system which is used in order for people to get to a better place and be favored as those that will be having business with the state. So in this manner, which now the case has shaped up to be, it means that the Ethics Committee of Parliament should sit down and deal with the matter, and then use the Powers and Privileges Act as well in order to investigate the matter.
Do you think that she should step down while that investigation goes on?
Absolutely. She has to be suspended. She has to step down because she cannot be presiding over, because remember, committees of parliament are committees of parliament that she presides over. She presides over the House, she presides over every other business of parliament, especially under the National Assembly. Therefore, she cannot continue being a presiding officer of parliament while she is under investigation, and that investigation could be heavily affected by that and even threatened. Therefore, she has to be suspended by parliament, and she has to be out of the precinct of parliament until the matter is concluded, until the investigation from both sides, both parliament ethics and the law and the criminal matter that is being dealt with by the NPA is also concluded.
In your statement, you make reference to the Phala Phala incident as well, and you're saying that the speaker essentially misapplied the rules to protect Ramaphosa against the voices that called for accountability in Phala Phala. But and at the end of the day, in December 2022, what happened was that it was a numbers game at the end of the day. And I wonder whether you think that this time around, the opposition and the ones who are calling for the speaker to be removed would have the numbers to have her impeached.
Well, if then they are going to use a numbers game, just like I've indicated in my opening remarks, that even in the Joint Standing Committee, they used the issue of numbers to vote out the investigation to be carried out by that particular committee. Even if at this current moment they do that, which cannot really be a matter of numbers, because once a complaint is lodged, Ethics Committee has to look into the complaint, have to deal with the complaint, unless then they take the complaint to the House for endorsement, or even within the committee to agree or not agree with it, but the matter has to be looked at and the matter has to be investigated by Parliament. But at the point where they are using the numbers to vote the matter down, then we're going to have to go and seek other mechanisms in terms of remedying the situation through the courts, because this particular matter is of a serious nature.
Thank you so much for your time. That is Veronica Mente, who is a Member of Parliament and also the chairperson of the EFF, also calling on Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula to step down as the Speaker of the National Assembly following these allegations that have been reported on in the Sunday Times. And this time around, unlike in 2021, there's reference to the ID investigation, the Independent Directorate's investigation that is underway, which falls, of course, under the NPA. But back in 2021, as I pointed out, Bantu Holomisa, the leader of the UDM, had told Parliament about these allegations and also spoke about the questions that were sent to him the questions that were allegedly sent to the Speaker of the National Assembly back in 2021 already. So which means that even if the Sunday Times is running the story today or yesterday about the investigation being underway, the new development, of course, course, being that the ID is heading that particular investigation. But back in 2021 already, the Speaker of the National Assembly knew about these allegations that have been leveled against her. Let's now speak to Mkhuleko Hlengwa, who is the national spokesperson of the Inkatha Freedom Party, also a member of Parliament and the chairperson of SCOPA. Mkhuleko, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. What do you make of these revelations?
Thank you much, Aldrin. Good afternoon to you and the listeners. Well, first and foremost, we're calling on the Speaker to do the honourable thing and take leave of absence from Parliament as the presiding officer, and most importantly as the chairperson of the National Assembly Programming Committee, which would essentially be responsible for scheduling matters which now, it's clear, may be affecting her. The second point is that this is no longer a matter for the Joint Standing Committee on Defence. It is a matter for the Ethics Committee, because these allegations against the Speaker are very, very serious. Moreover, the Speaker is already under an Ethics Committee investigation. If you remember, there's the matter surrounding the escalation of the salary of the Secretary to Parliament, which she's currently being investigated for. So she is, for all intents and purposes, a compromised Speaker and will not enjoy the confidence of Parliament. And we believe that it is in the interest of both Parliament and the Speaker herself for her to subject herself to all the processes which are underway and the investigations, and to allow Parliament to continue with its work without its head presiding over matters while she has a dark cloud over her. And we're calling for a speedy investigation to ensure that we arrive at a logical legal conclusion on this matter, and so that the report can actually serve before Parliament itself.
Is that possible to do, considering that also the term of Parliament comes to an end just before the 29th of May?
Well, it's not over until it's over, and it would be a miscarriage of justice, responsibility, duty, and function of Parliament to sort of let matters slide simply because there's an election in the offing. We still remain members of Parliament. Parliament remains intact, and it must perform its functions as and when it is required, which means that must happen right up to election day. We must not run the risk of actually politicizing the work of Parliament to the extent to which we're going to compromise the legitimacy of the institution by having political considerations or election considerations. So as far as we are concerned, for so long as Parliament is in session, the work of Parliament...
Mkhuleko, are you still there? Mkhuleko, are you still there?
Yes, I am. Sorry, you cut momentarily, yes?
Yeah. Okay, so I just quickly want to go back to 2021 before we wrap up the conversation. When Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula was nominated by the ANC to become the next Speaker of the National Assembly, how did the IFP vote?
Well, we voted in support of the Speaker then, and now these allegations intensify in the manner that they do. It is the jury of peers, which is members of Parliament, which must hold her accountable, and that is precisely why we are saying that she must take leave of absence from all her responsibilities of Parliament and subject herself to the processes of the investigations and cooperate with the investigations. And then when those matters serve before Parliament, we will vote in favour of what the report would have put before us. You'll remember that when the Phala matter served before Parliament, the IFP voted in favour of the independent panel's report, which said that the President's matter must continue receiving the attention of the IFP. And so we are a process-driven party, and we will continue to ensure that we do what is expected of us, and our members on the Ethics Committee will apply themselves diligently to the work of the Ethics Committee in holding the Speaker accountable and ensure that justice is served in the collective interests of democracy and Parliament.
Well, with that said, in hindsight, does the IFP still stand by that decision to vote in favor of Mapisa Nqakula being elected as the Speaker of the National Assembly? Also, at that time already, there were the findings of the Public Protector around the private jet of the SANDF jet that was used by the ANC to go to Zimbabwe during the COVID-19 lockdown. There were also the findings about her transporting, allegedly, a lady who was in a relationship with her deceased son from another country on the continent into South Africa without the necessary documentation.
Well, I think that the fluidity of the situation compels us to reflect from time to time, and as and when information presents itself, we will have to apply ourselves, and we've applied ourselves to the current situation, and we've made an assessment of the evolution of the matter, and it warrants for the Speaker to take a leave of absence from Parliament and subject herself to the process. So politics is not static, and developments have proven themselves that the allegations continue to be of a heightened sense of, seriousness, and it is in the interest of the institution that the Speaker is subjected to a process.
Yeah, but even with that said, shouldn't we also speak about the ability of the opposition to judge character, to say that because there has been this particular pattern, do we really want this person to be the head of one arm of the state, where each is the legislative arm?
Well, those assessments that can be done, but at the time, the reports that were before us were of the view that the necessary remedial action had been applied. And as I'm saying now, the issue before us requires for us to take action. What would be peculiar is for us to be hard-headed in the face of escalating levels of allegations and seriousness, and we continue on the same onward march. What we are saying now is that whilst the Speaker is the presiding officer of Parliament, it will not be practical for Parliament to continue with its work. And so we are making the clarion call for her to take leave of absence.
Thank you so much for your time. That is the spokesperson for the IFP, also Member of Parliament and Chairperson of SCOPA, Mkhuleko Hlengwa. It's a minute after 4:30, time for the news headlines.
Good afternoon. In the headlines, the Special Investigating Unit, the SIU, says it will institute civil litigation to recover the money that was misused on a chicken farming project in Marikana in the northwest. Gauteng police say they are investigating the shooting incident that occurred in Eldorado Park Extension 4 in the south of Johannesburg that claimed the lives of 2 people in their 20s. And the ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula says while the party has rigorous guidelines to select its candidates for the National Assembly and provincial legislatures, it will also make decisions on a case-by-case basis. Mbalula was speaking on the sidelines of an ANC-NEC meeting in Boksburg in Johannesburg to finalize the party's candidate lists ahead of a Friday IEC deadline. Greg House will have details on these and other stories. For SAFM News, I'm Anne Musa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just a reminder, it's a heavy backlog still with us on the R21 South. If you're leaving the airport en route towards if you're leaving Pretoria en route to the airport, 4 flight connections. The R21 going south. There's been some roadworks today, just south of Clayville. Plus, there's been a stationary truck in the mix for a bit as well. So it's a major backlog of traffic all the way through to St George's Hotel almost. That's a very heavy queue. A lot of traffic coming out of Durban today. The N3 back from Sherwood into Spaghetti Junction. Then you've got the usual breakdown in the roadworks at Paradise Valley. So that's a second queue from Spaghetti Junction out towards the Pinetown split, and then the stationary truck at Cliffdale causing some delays as well. Cape Town, not 1 but 2 collisions, I think both involving taxis at Hospital Bend and 2 inbound. Very heavy. One of those crashes near Mowbray Main, the other sort of on the bend itself. So very heavy coming in from Pinetown on the from Pinelands on the N2 inbound towards Hospital Bend. The M3 in from UCT getting caught up in that as well. A lot of onlooking on the way out, so Nelson Mandela Boulevard and Philip Kosana drive those routes out of town through the bend. Very busy as well. And at the same time, there's been a crash on the N1 leaving town just by the N7 highway bridge passing Canal Walk. Very heavy traffic conditions towards that scene as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Doming Kapele.
A very good afternoon to you. In your sports this hour, the latest FIFA Club World Cup rankings revealed last week. Mamelodi Sundowns head coach Rulani Mogoena already has one eye on next year's competition. The World Football Governing Body will now expand the 2025 edition to 32 teams, with 4 coming from Africa. And following their 1-0 win over TP Mazembe in the CAF Champions League at the weekend to finish top of Group A, the Downs mentor believes that the impressive run so far in the continental tournament edges them just a tad bit closer. Then in rugby, Springbok Sevens head coach Sandile Ngobo says that his side let South Africa down with a poor showing in the Sevens circuit. The Blitzboks finished in 11th place at the HSBC Sevens Los Angeles on Sunday, their worst finish so far in the 2024 season, with tournaments in Hong Kong and Singapore left. The Springbok Sevens find themselves in 7th place on the log. The top 8 sides in the series will retain core status. Then in cricket, Bangladesh won the toss and they elected to bowl first in the first of the 3-match T20 series against Sri Lanka today. Sri Lanka posted 206 in their 20 overs and Bangladesh are about to go in. Now the series marks the start of Sri Lanka's month-long tour of Bangladesh, which also includes 3 one-day internationals and 2 tests. Now both teams view the series as key preparations for the World Cup, which is coming up in June, and Bangladesh have never defeated Sri Lanka in a T20 series before. In tennis, Andrei Rublev won his appeal against losing his ranking points and prize money after being disqualified from the Dubai Tennis Championships. The Russian was defaulted for unsportsmanlike conduct in his semi-final with Alexandra Bublik. Rublev screamed in the face of a line judge following a dispute call in their third set, but his fine of over 693,000 rands for the code violation remains in place after the appeal. On that note, it's a wrap from my side. I'll have more in the next hour. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumin Khabel.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And it's time for a market update with Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe, good afternoon. Welcome to the show. Let's look at RCL Foods' improved interims and also AVI's satisfactory interims and Bidvesta's decent interims.
Afternoon to you, Aldrin, and to the listeners. Yes, starting with RCL, the guys delivered improved results mainly because of rainbow chicken and sugar. And Aldrin, that's despite the negative impact of the avian influenza. Rainbow continued to execute a turnaround plan, and sugar improved was achieved despite the lower crop yields and largely benefiting from higher market prices. Revenue up 8.4%, profits as headline earnings per share from continuing operations up a whopping 52%. Remember, they sold the Vector Logistics in August 2023 for 1.25 billion, and RCL is pursuing a formal separation from Rainbow Chicken by listing Rainbow separately on the GSE, and then AVI. Their performance was at least satisfying in a tough trading environment, and we know that the environment is because of constrained consumer demand, production sites impacted by unreliable municipal infrastructure, as a port inefficiencies disrupted supply chain, and load shedding. Direct cost are sitting at 21.1 million, revenue up 7%, with I&J impacted by poor cash rates and loss of export sales, and due to those port issues, profits as headline earnings per share up 17.4%, with interim dividends also up 17.4%, and decent results under the circumstances, that is for Bidvest, largely driven by new business, good gross margin and expense management. The guys acquired several companies in South Africa, Australia, UK, and also Singapore, adding to their hygiene services and facilities management. Revenue up 8.8%, profits as headline earnings per share up 5.3%, and the final dividend up 6.9%.
And tell us about local and international market developments.
Market sentiment was positive at the start of the session, and that was ahead of the U.S. Fed chair testimony to their Congress and also China's National People's Congress and also U.S. job data later in the week. And investors are waiting for some reassurance that central banks are on track to cut interest rates in the coming months. And I guess as a market participant, one has to be cautious that interest rate cut expectations might not materialize as expected. Oil prices are benefiting from those OPEC cuts, saying that they will continue with their cuts up until the second half of this year. Brent crude is up 0.7% at $83 a barrel, and gold lingers near 2-month peak as bets build for June rate cuts. We see gold is up 0.6% at $2,095. Platinum is up 0.3 at $890. And Aldrin is worth noting again that Bitcoin rallied to a 2-year high, breaking above the $65,000, that is over 1.2 million rands, as a wave of money carried in within a striking distance for a record level. And we see the Dow opened down 0.3%, S&P is down 0.1%, the DAX is down 0.2%, FTSE is down 0.7%, but the CAC is up 0.1%, and the JSE is flat, with our resources up 8%, industrials are flat, financials are down 0.8%, and the rand is 19.01 to the US dollar, 24.11 to the pound, and 20.63 to the euro.
Thank you so much. That is Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers.
Catch the Insider SA this Monday evening at 6 as 10,000 hours at the piano elevate South Africa's teenage pianist Mike Wang to the peak of music. DJ Nilofa Said turns afternoon traffic jams into the best part of your day. And para-athlete Darren Thomas wins hearts, minds, and medals in Miami, USA. That's the Insider SA this Monday evening at 6. Repeat Saturday at 1 p.m. and Sunday morning at 10:30 on S3.
Third-placed VfB Stuttgart understand that only victory will get them close to the top 2 teams on the table, whereas Union Berlin have a mammoth task to cause an upset away from home. Who will dictate terms at the MHP Arena? This is the Bundesliga, football as it's meant to be. Experience the German style of the game. VfB Stuttgart FC versus FC Union Berlin on Friday, 8 March at 9:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
2 champions will collide as EFC returns live this Thursday. Watch the first title defense of flyweight sensation Gift the Day Walker.
Gift Walker takes the tap.
Against the current bantamweight title holder, the legendary Nkazimulu King Shaka Zulu.
All hail King Shaka,
who aims to join teammate Dricus du Plessis and once more being a 2-division champion of Africa. EFC 111 live this Thursday. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
MasterChef, the biggest, most loved culinary TV show on the planet, is coming to S3. This fresh local version of MasterChef South Africa will cook up a storm on S3 for the first time in 2024. Enter on www.masterchefsa.tv and start prepping for the opportunity to win R1 million and the prestigious title of Mzansi's new MasterChef. Entries close on the 15th of March. Channel A Better You only on S3. Open up.
Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline. Going beyond the headline with Aldrin Sampear.
If your partner decides to go and get a firearm, does that for you also mean it's the end of the relationship?
She used to like her drink, and there would be some acrimony. She liked arguing. The moment she got that gun license, I said, I am out of here. I dumped her. I left. That was 2016.
He has shown me the gun when we have our second meeting, and I just felt like I could pay my fetang isn't game. How come you go around carrying a gun and then you are even showing me go to this spam? What does that mean? I'm sorry. My kids are young. Sorry.
It's just the way that you phrase that as well.
Hashtag SAFMBTH. Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Good afternoon, Aldrin and SAFM listeners. Aldrin, Maruone, Hasipula Garegana, Atiba Mipula Yaskayana. Nimusione, Pabonale Mollo Papa. When there's a smoke, there's fire, definitely. Even if these allegations are not true, but you know, they are capable of doing this. All of them, these guys, they are implicated in the state captures. Some of them say they will take it on review. Review for what? Review because there's no trust. There's no trust. You are not ethical. The moment you are implicated in corruption or whatever, you must just step aside. This is their own resolution with these ANC guys. So she must also step aside. It's their own resolution. It's not us. It's their own resolution. Good afternoon,
Aldrin, and the brilliant team behind the scene. I think the allegation against National Assembly Speaker are very serious allegations. She must do the honorable thing and step down with immediate effect to allow the Parliament to continue its work without her interference and allow the process of investigation to be done.
It's a very good afternoon, Aldrin. Aldrin, when it comes to the speaker and her issues, we know what's going to happen. We know that her party will pull all the stops to protect her. And even when the evidence is there, but they will tell you, no, we must follow the law and then stuff, and then this must go to review, and then this and that. So we know there's nothing will happen on the lady there. So yeah, ANC will pull all the stops as they usually do to others to protect them. Thank you.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
All right. As we said earlier on, we did reach out to the ANC, and Luthuli House is saying that the ANC caucus in Parliament must comment and respond to these newspaper articles. And now we're waiting for the ANC caucus to come back to us. Is that hopefully at 5:45? That we could speak to them? Okay, so we possibly could speak to the ANC in Parliament at around 5:45 to hear what they have to say about these allegations against their deployee, who is the Speaker of the National Assembly, and if they agree with the steps that have been taken by some opposition parties that she appears before the Ethics Committee. 0614 104 107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
Well, it's 13 minutes now before 5 o'clock. We're in conversation next with Davi Nal, who's the director of Out LGBT Wellbeing, who's joining me in studio. He's also flanked by Andrew Fleming, who's an HIV provincial advisor at the U.S. Consulate, also joining us in studio. So the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, provided direct grant funding to support men's health program with a focus on sexual reproductive health. In partnership with the Out LGBT Wellbeing, the grant funding is also working to provide comprehensive care for the LGBTQI community in 3 major cities, that is Nelson Mandela Bay, Johannesburg, as well as Buffalo City. The partnership is set to provide access to free HIV prevention care, treatment services in communities. To help us understand more about these initiatives, we're joined by Davi as well as Andrew. Davi, good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Hi, Aldrin. Hi.
30 years.
Yeah.
30 years, as old as our democracy.
Yeah, we are the second eldest LGBT NGO in South Africa. And this year it's actually 50 years on.
Wow,
Yeah.
30 years ago.
Yeah.
But if you look at how things have before we deal with this funding that has come now from USAID, but if you look at how things have changed in South Africa, what's your observation?
Well, Aldrin, I think it's a sort of open knowledge that South Africa has a very favorable legal disposition. And in 1994, as you pointed out, with the new democracy, sexual orientation was actually included in the South African Constitution, the first in the world. But sadly, social attitudes, prejudice does not always keep up with legal equality. So a lot of the legal equality promised in our Constitution actually is not the experienced reality of LGBT people on the ground. If you put it through to our health context, for example, up to 9% in research that we've done, up to 9% of gay men are actually refused healthcare based on their sexual orientation. So that is one example where social equality does not comply to the lofty legal equality of the Constitution.
Yeah, and now there's this decision that has been taken by PEPFAR and USAID to have direct funding given to an organization like yourself.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
Yeah, no, it means a lot, and thank you to our USAID colleagues. So we're the first local community group that are receiving direct money from USAID and from the US government. We have received funding up to this point, but as a sub-recipient under bigger grants, now as I suppose the expression of faith and following a development process, we will get the funding directly from USAID.
Yeah. Andrew, good afternoon. Thank you so much for making time for us. Do you agree with David that it is an expression of faith?
Absolutely. This is a really exciting moment for USAID, and it really is a celebration of what happens when you can empower local partners and communities to lead the health that they need. This is, again, as was mentioned, this is the first time that we've had a direct award for the LGBTQI plus community. But importantly, this is an award to a local organization directly that is also led by LGBTQI plus people. And for us, again, it's been such a long journey without Engagement's Health to date. And we're really just very happy that this award is moving ahead to provide such critical care, particularly for the men who have sex with men category.
Why the change in the formula of allocation?
This is part of USAID's overall localization strategy. Particularly on our healthcare, we have a really excellent opportunity in front of us to not only empower localizations to continue to implement and strategize on how healthcare is spent in South Africa and the other countries that USAID works in, but it's also an opportunity to ensure that during and after any award that's made, the healthcare and the work can continue to be led by people on the ground.
Mm-hmm. What would you say some of the critical areas are?
Specifically for health, LGBTQI plus healthcare remains a critical component of HIV care overall. But if we're looking at the wider HIV field, this award is one component, for instance, of reaching men. Men remain one of the hardest targets to reach in general HIV care. And again, targeted approaches to reach communities such as men, adolescent girls and young women, LGBTQI people. All of that will be needed in targeted innovation to reach those communities, and this award is just one example of how we're doing that with partners on the ground.
Okay, 0614-104107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear, and our studio line is 086-000-2032 in conversation with Davinell, as well as Andrew Fleming, looking at the decision that has been taken by USAID to provide direct grants to the LGBT Wellbeing organization, which was, of course, led by Davinell. Another question that I want to raise when we come back, Davi, is I know that 3 cities have been identified, but considering the levels of inequality in South Africa and also inequality when it comes to access to information, what about the men who live in rural areas?
Catch the Insider SA this Monday evening at 6 as 10,000 hours at the piano elevate South Africa's teenage pianist Mike Wang to the peak of music. DJ Nilofa Said turns afternoon traffic jams into the best part of your day. And para-athlete Darren Thomas wins hearts, minds and medals in Miami, USA. That's the Insider SA, this Monday evening at 6. Repeat Saturday at 1 p.m. and Sunday morning at 10:30 on S3.
Two champions will collide as EFC returns live this Thursday. Watch the first title defense of flyweight sensation Gift-A-Day Walker.
And it's all over. Gift Walker takes the tap.
Against the current bantamweight title holder, the legendary Nkazimulu King Shaka Zulu.
All hail King Shaka.
Who aims to join teammate Dricus du Plessis and once more being a two-division champion of Africa. EFC 111 live this Thursday. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
Rugby correspondent Khotso Seloch Dormers are back in Cape Town after this weekend for a whole series of home matches, including one against Leinster, which could be season-defining effectively. So I suppose the Stormers have that advantage, build up momentum. They could well end in the top two.
They can well end in the top two, and I think that's what they'll be gunning for. And I think Jake White summed it up perfectly and said the Stormers have had a coaching team that's been together for almost a decade now, and they understand the Western Province way of doing things. They understand, the kind of game plan that they want. The Bulls have only been together for about 3 years under Jake White's administration.
Top Sport on SAFM. The only talk radio afternoon drive show that makes sense. Beyond the Headline with Aldrin Sampear, right here on SAFM.
So we're concluding our conversation with Davi Nall, the Director of Out LGBT Wellbeing, as well as Andrew Fleming, HIV Provincial Advisor at the U.S. Consulate. So Davi, just before we went to the break there, one of the points that have been raised even before in some of the meetings and events that I've gone to around the awareness of the plight of people who live with HIV, but also the plight of young men who do identify as gay outside of any heterosexual identity, is that what about the rural areas? I know 3 cities have been identified here, Nelson Mandela Bay, Johannesburg, as well as Buffalo City, but the rural areas where there's also inequality to access to information.
No, you're right. Absolutely. And over and above our program, there's a range of programs for MSM in other cities and other centers. But you're absolutely spot on in terms of men in bigger centers have more access to competent and sensitized services. That it's much more likely that a rural MSM face increased stigma, increased discrimination, and a lack of adequate services.
So what do you think should happen there?
Well, in an ideal world, that we have enough money to roll out these services in all towns. But, unfortunately, the reality of life is that there's limited resources. And then you go where the biggest concentration of MSM, or men who have sex with men, reside.
Yeah.
And those are your cities.
Okay. Andrew, your take on the rural areas and people in rural areas, access to information?
Absolutely. And I think it's really important to point out that this award is being made to pilot and to try and innovate new approaches to work with the men who have sex with men community to test, to get them onto treatment, to prevent new cases from happening, and to empower communities. In the next 2 years, we're going to learn so much from this award that tells us how to do that not only can be expanded in the future potentially, but also integrated into USAID's and the U.S. government's overall HIV care in South Africa and indeed around the world. Yeah.
So understand 10,000 MSM that you wish to test over the next 2 years. What is it that you're trying to achieve here with the data?
I think the data is going to tell us a lot about what engagement strategies work to bring them into care. We know that men, for instance, are really often quite averse to seeking health care in the first place, whether it's due to stigma, whether it's due to family pressures, economic pressures. We want to find out how best to bring men into care in the first place, what methods of treatment result in them staying on treatment and suppressing their viral loads, and what ways of doing so keeps them safe and healthy within their own communities for greater socioeconomic empowerment.
Yeah, well, at least in South Africa, we can have these conversations openly without the fear of being arrested. Unfortunately, some countries on the continent cannot. And one of those countries, quite recently, the parliament there passed the Human Sexual Rights and Family Values Bill, which has been touted as an anti-LGBTQ bill. What do you make of what's happening in Ghana?
Sure, and I can say from the United States is deeply troubled by the Ghanaian Parliament's passage of this legislation. Limiting the rights of one group in the society undermines the rights of all, and the United States echoes the call by the Ghanaians and other civil society organizations who have urged a review of the constitutionality of this bill, particularly to protect the rights of all individuals in Ghana.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I quickly add? I think in the ideal world also that the South African government speaks out against these anti-human rights developments in the continent, similar to what it does in other forums. That one would hope that they would also seriously act upon the human rights abuses of LGBT people in the continent.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, we are speaking here about human rights and the rights of people who identify as LGBTQ are also human rights at the end of the day.
Of course.
They are indeed.
Thank you so much for your time. Andrew Fleming there is a HIV Provincial Advisor at the US Consulate, as well as Davin Nell, the Director of Out LGBT Wellbeing. Thank you so much for making time for us. It's 5 o'clock. It's time for the news.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
SIU looks to recover money from dodgy farming project and investigation into Eldorado Park shooting. Good day to you. The SIU says it'll institute civil litigation to recover the money that was misused on a chicken farming project in Marikana in the northwest. An SIU probe has revealed how a non-profit organisation was hijacked and funds that were meant to uplift poor women in Marikana and surrounding areas on the chicken farming project were misused. Grant funding to the value of 13 million rand was awarded to an NPO, and it also received a further 3.5 million rand. The matter relates to the SIU's probe into the National Lotteries Commission of over 1.4 billion rand in alleged dodgy grants awarded to NPOs. SIU spokesperson Kaiser Kanyahu.
What is then going to happen is we will then take this matter up in either the High Court or the Special Tribunal to make sure that we recover the money because it wasn't used for what it was intended for. And in as far as criminality is concerned, if we find that there's criminality, we will send that to the National Prosecuting Authority.
Gauteng police say they're investigating a shooting incident that occurred in Eldorado Park south of Johannesburg that's claimed the lives of 2 people. The shooting happened on Saturday, but reports of the incident are now only coming to light. There was also a shooting in the Riverlea area at the weekend which claimed the lives of 3 people. The area has been suffering with gun violence for some time. Police spokesperson Dimokatse Neboli.
No one is arrested and the motive of the shooting is unknown at this stage. A team of investigators has been activated to investigate the murderers and follow up on any leads that they receive. Investigations continue.
The ANC Secretary-General Fikile Mbalula says while the party has rigorous guidelines to select its candidates for the National Assembly and provincial legislatures, it'll also make decisions on a case-by-case basis. He was speaking on the sidelines of an ANC-NEC meeting in Boksburg, east of Johannesburg, to finalise the party's candidate lists ahead of a Friday IEC deadline. The guidelines say those implicated in propriety but whose cases are still pending at the party's Integrity Commission can stand. Mbalula commented on the matter.
There are issues of integrity that the ANC considers, but integrity also is looked at in relation to what the person is accused about, the standing of the person in how far it affect, in as far as how it affects the African National Congress in terms of its standing in society, but it also relates to the matters of legality. All of those issues are considered on a case-by-case basis, and then we can assure the public that the matters have been considered. Once the list is done, we will be able to relate to these matters on practical basis.
A man remains missing at sea off the coast of Nelson Mandela Bay in the Eastern Cape. The spokesperson for the National Sea Rescue Institute, Craig Lambinon, says a man overboard alarm was sounded from a container ship after the crew on board noticed their fellow seaman was missing.
A 31-year-old Indian man remains missing at sea. NSFAS are appealing to mariners in Algoa Bay and beyond, and public members along the Kubaga shoreline to be vigilant. The South African Police Services and water policing and diving services have been alerted.
The Justice Minister, Ronald Lamola, says South Africa must continue putting pressure on Israel to end the conflict in Gaza. Lamola and the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Zizi Kodwa, launched the 2024 Human Rights Month program at the Kgosi Mampuru Correctional Centre in Pretoria. Minister Lamola says what Palestinians are enduring has many similarities to South Africa's apartheid atrocities. Top story, the SIU says it'll institute civil litigation to recover the money that was misused on a chicken farming project in Marikana in the northwest. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Goos.
Coming up in your sports this hour, general tickets for Springboks versus Ireland at Loftus sold out in 30 minutes, and Australia's Cummins named Sunrisers captain. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Still very heavy on the way to the airport coming out of Pretoria today. Don't underestimate this queue, particularly if you need those flight connections on time. The root cause is really some roadworks on the R21 just south of Olifantsfontein Road. Multiple lanes are closed. There's also a breakdown before Olifantsfontein, but that's basically in the queue already. It's a queue of traffic on the R21 that stretches right back almost to St George's Hotel. So alternative routes might be a good call, or extra time and plenty of it to get through that kilometres long backlogging situation out there. Pretoria Dustport Tunnel's got a broken down truck in the tunnels, so both ways being held up. Also leaving Pretoria, Esky and Pathleli, heavy queues up towards the Mopani Highway today. The backlog down towards the Marabastad area. Coming out of Durban, still a lot of pressure on the N3 from really Tollgate Bridge right through to the Paradise Valley split in the Pinetown area. Very slow through the works today, on your way outbound to Pinetown. Broken down truck on the M7 near the Queensborough Belleville Road, so that's slow heading out from the N2 highway. And Cape Town, if you're on the M2 inbound, stuck in some heavy traffic. There are two crashes, one at Mowbray Main Road and one inside Hospital Bend. Both of those on the inbound side has pushed traffic on the N2 back as far as Jansmuts Drive in this sort of Athlone area. Very heavy getting out of town as well with all the onlooking. So Philip Kosan and Nelson Mandela Boulevards are heavy. M3 inbound from UCT is really bad getting through the bend as well. And at the same time, if you're coming out of central Cape Town on the N1, there's been a crash plus some flooding after some rains today just by the N7 Highway Bridge. It's a very heavy delay from the city centre all the way out passing Canal Walk towards that scene. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Two champions will collide as EFC returns live this Thursday. Watch the first title defense of flyweight sensation Gift the Day Walker against the current bantamweight title holder, the legendary Nkazimulu King Shaka Zulu.
All hail King Shaka,
who aims to join teammate Dricus du Plessis and once more being a two-division champion of Africa. EFC 111 live this Thursday. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
And I presume one of the problems that young children have is that only their parents can really argue for them. They can't argue for themselves. Is that one of the reasons they're almost neglected sometimes?
Yes, it is. But there are a number of other reasons. And the three big ones for me are a clear lack of political will. It's election time now, and we'll see every politician kissing babies. But once the election's over, those children will be forgotten. And then we have public officials, certainly the majority, who are simply incompetent and shouldn't be in their jobs. And then budget. If you look at the budget that was announced a few weeks ago, less than 2% of the basic education budget goes for early childhood development. And we're talking about 6 million children in total, the age range birth to 6.
Professor Eric Atmore, thank you, at the Centre for Early Childhood Development. Really appreciate the time.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes, 6 to 9 a.m. This is
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM 3 to 6 p.m.
#SAFMBTH.
It is 8 minutes after 5 o'clock. Coming up on the show in this hour, we speak to the spokesperson of NSFAS, Ishmael Mnisi, and this is following the press briefing that they had a bit earlier on today. Also the confirmation about the number of applications that they have received. By March, the institution says 1.2 million students were provisionally funded. 59,000 were awaiting evaluations and 94,000 required supporting documents. So we'll get an update from Ishmael Mnisi around that, and also the disbursement of payments directly from the tertiary institutions. And then at 5:20, we speak to Dr. Musima Mabunda, who is the head of wellness at Discovery Vitality. Today is World Obesity Day. Actually, a friend of mine who's an engineer said, don't forget to mention that today is also World Engineering Day. Or is it World Engineers Day? Which one is it, Entle? Let me see. World Engineering Day. Yeah, it's World Engineering Day today as well. So happy World Engineering Day to all of the engineers out there. 0614-104-107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Good afternoon, Aldrin and SAFM listeners. Aldrin, Maruone, Hasipula, Garekana, Atiba, Mipula, Skayana. Nimusione, Pabonale Mollo Papa.
Good afternoon, Aldrin, and the brilliant team behind the scene. I think the allegation against National Assembly Speaker are very serious allegations.
Aldrin, afternoon, sir. Hey, it is heartbroken to hear that our children are becoming the victim of crime. Hey, I urge everyone, every parent in Zanzi here to please, guys, let us protect our children. Know where your child is 24/7. This young soul, they don't know nothing. They don't know how to protect themselves. They need our protection. To those who abducted that child in Western Cape, hey, I pray to God they can feel something in their heart and bring the innocent child home, safe and sound. This is very bad. It's very bad indeed. Thank you, my brother. Thank you.
Aldrin, good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to your team and to the SAFM listeners. Aldrin, there's no smoke without fire. And when it comes to Mapisa Ngakula, I won't be surprised. You remember she wants to smuggle the lady from a country, remember which country? I think it was Ghana Burundi or Congo into South Burundi, Africa illegally.
Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
It is 11 minutes after 5 o'clock, and we're in conversation next with Ishmael Mnisi, who is the spokesperson for NSFAS. A bit earlier on today, the National Student Aid Scheme, Financial Aid Scheme, held a media briefing to provide an update on the status of registration process payment of allowances to beneficiaries and student accommodation. In recent weeks, the Financial Aid Scheme has faced numerous challenges at the start of the 2024 academic year, which has led to many students being left without access to their higher education institutions of choice. To share their solutions, Ishmael Mnisi is now joining us on the line. Ishmael, good evening. Thank you so much for making time for us. So earlier on, we heard the update around the applications that have been received by NSFAS. But from your own processes, how many students would you say are still awaiting confirmation from NSFAS whether or not they have been accepted?
Well, good evening, Aldrin, and to the SAFM listeners. Aldrin, we've got two types of students who are still awaiting to be confirmed. We've got the ones that are awaiting evaluation, which are 59,723, and we've got the ones awaiting supporting documents that we as NSFAS actually are awaiting supporting documents from them. They are 94,816. Now, these, Aldrin, are applicants that we hope we still want to assist as NSFAS to make sure that they get funding for this year for those that qualifies. So we are pursuing them via WhatsApp messages, SMSs, and through their emails, so that they can respond and send us the necessary documents that we require for us to be able to complete this process.
With that said then, with the ones that have been confirmed and the ones who have met the criteria, how many have actually been paid?
Well, all the students who are provisionally funded, which we have indicated that they are about 1.2 million, all of those are funded currently as we speak through the two interventions that we have made with the upfront payment made in January and the other one made now by the end of February, which will be funded, one for universities through universities, and then for TVET colleges, we are going to fund them through the direct payment service providers.
Mm-hmm. So last week, the SABC was reporting on the Central University of Technology students in the Free State who said that they were wrongfully excluded. Would they be part of the people who are still awaiting re-adjudication, who have made appeals? What could be the reasons why they have been excluded?
Well, if these are returning students, the exclusion can be as a result of wrong data submitted to NSFAS. But in as far as we are concerned, I have not heard of wrong data thus far submitted to us. We have been engaging with the Central University of Technology, and they are among the students who are going to be receiving their allowances. Actually, their allowances were paid already by the 1st of March, Aldrin. So we are not aware of further challenges that might be there, but our servicing administrators are there at the university to assist the university, provided that they might have uploaded wrong academic data.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And for those who say that they have been approved but they haven't received the payment as yet, whether they are at a university or enrolled at an FET college, what recourse do they have?
Well, for the TVET colleges, their payments allowances will be on the 6th of March. That's when they are going to receive their allowances. Universities, they differ in terms of the dates that they provided us. As I'm saying, since the beginning of March, there have been institutions that have paid allowances. We've got others who have paid today. We are still expecting other institutions to be paying in tranches between today and the 8th of March. So various institutions provided us a list of their commitment dates for payment. So we will encourage that students must contact their universities for them to get the date in which their allowances have been paid. And I must indicate, Aldrin, that we have made provision for the entire allowances of students to be paid, be it the book allowances, the accommodation allowances, transport allowances, food allowances, and personal care allowances. So all of these for university students will be paid by universities, and for TVET colleges, they will be paid by our direct payment service providers.
Yeah. So does this include the payment for accommodation, or is accommodation still being dealt with by NSFAS?
Yes, this includes also payment of accommodation, Aldrin. As I'm saying, for universities, we have requested, for university students, we have requested our universities to pay all the allowances. And for TVET colleges as well, accommodation will be paid by the direct payment service provider. So we are covering all the allowances.
Yeah. So then how do you deal with that issue that you raised last year in terms of the vetting of student accommodation that meet the necessary standards? And because also remember that the Department of Higher Education had an entire inquiry into looking into the state of accommodation for students, I think about 5 or 6 years ago. With that said as well, some of the landlords of these properties saying that when NSFAS was paying the students directly, the students would end up not paying their rent that is due to the landlord.
Well, Aldrin, we are working with our institutions and our portal providers and accommodation providers to onboard students, particularly amongst the 17 universities which are in our pilot project and 26 TVET colleges which are also in our pilot project. And
hello, Ismail, are you still there? Ismail, are you still there? Okay, we seem to have lost Ismail Mnisi. We're going to try and put him back on the line, or try and get him back on the line, who's the spokesperson for NSFAS. And as I indicated a bit earlier on, there was that press briefing looking at the number of applications that have been received by the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. And things have really been tatters for most students who haven't received payments. You may have seen some visuals of a student sleeping in community halls and so forth, still awaiting payment. And now also the decision that was taken that the students will now get the payments directly made to them, and then the students will then have to pay for the accommodation. But as I pointed out, it has been raised as a concern by property developers and by tenants that once the money is given directly to the students, some students end up not paying, and then they run the risk of being evicted from the student accommodation. So how do you deal with that aspect? Is Ismail Mnisi back on the line? So Ismail, you're still speaking about this issue in relation to the direct payment to students and students who do not pay the money that is due to their landlords.
Yes, of course. Aldrin, I was explaining that we informed all the accommodation providers that they must not unilaterally accommodate NSFAS students without them being accredited, because they are not going to receive payments from NSFAS. And also send a message to students informing that should they decide to stay in accommodation which is unaccredited, they will also not receive the accommodation allowance. In actual fact, we will regard them as students who are supposed to be paid a transport allowance instead of accommodation allowance, because we will not pay any students who are staying in an unaccredited student accommodation. Then I also went to try and explain our placement of students, that through this pilot project, Aldrin, we have now placed more than 88,705 students as in to date through various institutions and also private accommodation. And we are still in the institutions to make sure that all NSFAS students who are currently qualifying and not provided with accommodation are assisted and directed accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that still doesn't deal with that issue about the payments directly to the landlord.
Oh, of course, Aldrin, the decision that we have taken as NSFAS is to pay directly the accommodation money to landlords. The experiences that we have had as NSFAS is that when you give students money, tuition and accommodation money, that money ends up not actually going to institutions, including the landlords. Now, just to deal with that, we are now directly paying money that is due to landlords, to the accommodation providers themselves, and the tuition money to institutions. The only allowances that goes to students are transport allowance, personal care allowance, and the book allowances. Those are allowances that we are directly paying into the student account every month.
Okay, so Ishmael, are you saying that for accommodation, the money is paid directly to the landlords? Because earlier on I asked about that question and you said the money for the landlords or the money for accommodation is also paid to the students. Which one is it?
No. The money for accommodation is paid to the landlord, to the accommodation providers directly.
Okay. No, thanks for the clarity. And then just quickly on the NSFAS loan application, 30,000 applications that have been received. The last time you and I had a chat, I asked you about the interest rate on the loans. Have that been now clarified? Have you agreed and found a solution around how much the interest rate will be on those loans?
Yes, certainly, Aldrin. The interest rate will be in an inflation-targeted interest rate. that students will pay a year after the completion of their qualification. So we will give students a breather for them to be able to get employment before the issues of payments and interest could accrue into this loan.
But inflation fluctuates. So what's the interest rate that these students will be paying on the loans?
As I'm saying, inflation fluctuates. Annually, we will use the inflation targeted rate that is provided by National Treasury and NSFAS, so that at the end of the day, that inflation rate is the one that will apply every year. This is the same approach that banks uses in order for them to determine the interest that we pay, on the accounts that we're having or the credit that we have with banks. So we are going to use the very same approach.
So right now you don't have an interest rate. You don't know what the interest rate is going to be on those loans.
If we are referring to the year 2024, if I'm not mistaken, it must be about 6.7 or 6.5. That is what the rate will be. And this is the general rate, by the way, Aldrin, that is paid by our all the creditors in the country. As I'm saying, it is inflation targeted. So it is not going to be anything different from what each and every loan holder in South Africa pays.
Well, no, it's actually different because you have a repo rate that you and I would pay if you take a loan. So you have a loan that is influenced by the repo rate. And the repo rate, of course, is also influenced by CPI. But that's an MPC decision. What I'm trying to get to is how do you decide on what the interest rate is for a loan that is related to or linked to CPI?
Adrian, as I'm saying, my understanding is that the loans that NSFAS will be offered annually, the interest rate will be the CPI-based interest rate. Now, as I was saying, that this year, the understanding is that it is about 6.7%, and which I stand to be corrected in terms of that figure. But, the principle is that we are not going to charge students a rate which is beyond the nationally determined interest rate.
Okay, there is Ishmael Mnisi, who is the spokesperson of NSFAS. I have to say I'm still a bit confused. Maybe there's somebody out there who understands how the interest will be calculated on the loan. And also just think about it, that interest rate that keeps on fluctuating based on CPI, that is pegged on CPI. That's the first time that I'm hearing about such a formula, because the formula that we are used to is the one where where you have the repo rate that is announced by the MPC, and then you have the prime lending rate that is then attached to that, and then on top of that you have the banks that decide that how much they'll be loaning the money to you at. But this particular model, as Ishmael Mnisi says, is pegged on CPI solely, and CPI fluctuates every month. It's 26 minutes after 5 o'clock.
You are listening to Aldrin Sampear on SAFM.
0614-104-107, and you can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear. Our studio line is 086-000-2032. We're in conversation next with Dr. Musima Mabunda, who is the head of wellness at Discovery Vitality. Today, the health fraternity commemorates World Obesity Day, in a bid to raise awareness not only on the risks of not addressing your weight, but also shed light on the medical implications. Obesity affects 1 in 8 people around the world. One of the trends that has become part of this discussion is the rise in weight loss drugs such as Ozempic and Wegovy as an alternative to traditional bypass surgery. From the US to China, these type 2 diabetes drugs have been high in demand in recent months due to their popularity on social media. To tell us more about the dangers of these drugs, we speak to Dr. Musima Mabunda. Dr. Mabunda, good afternoon, and thank you so much for making time for us.
Good afternoon, Aldrin, and good afternoon to your listeners. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm well, thank you so much for asking. How prevalent is the use of Ozempic and Wegovy in South Africa specifically?
So, Aldrin, without having the facts and the numbers at hand, what we know and what we've been seeing reported is that there is a shortage of Ozempic in South Africa. And to bring everyone up to speed, Ozempic is a drug that is recommended for people that have diabetes. And the reason there is a shortage, it's reported that it is also used off-label for things like weight loss, as you mentioned. So I haven't seen the numbers of hand, but it's been extensively published, and it's not something that is in South Africa. It's a trend that you see across the globe. And I think, Aldrin, before we even jump into the drugs, the shortage, the appropriate use, I think maybe it would benefit the listeners if we define what we mean when we say obesity, because today is World Obesity Day. I think it's just worth highlighting that obesity is a chronic condition. It is multifactorial. It is a relapsing disorder. So multifactorial, it's got multiple causes. Relapsing disorder, people living with obesity would tend to have it relapsing versus it being cured. And it's characterized by excess body weight, which is defined as a body mass index of greater than or equal to 30 kilograms. Divided by height squared. And the reason why a day like today is important is obesity is not just obesity for obesity's sake. It's a chronic condition that is associated with many other health conditions such as cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, etc. Hence, days like this are important to raise awareness and to just help people guide in terms of how do you prevent it and how do you appropriately manage it so that you can reduce your health risk.
And also hearing that 1 in 8 people are affected by obesity, but also why is it that women are more susceptible? There's a 2016 survey that was done and it found that around 44% of the women that were surveyed were obese compared to 11% men.
Yeah, so that is a widely cited statistics that is sad. But if one thinks about what causes obesity, right, there's medical factors, but our environmental factors are some of the most common reasons why people are obese. Things like excess consumption of energy-dense foods, where you eat like your fast foods and foods that are just rich in calories but nutrient dense. That's number one. The second element that drives obesity is if you are not moving as much as you should, if we're not as physically active as we should be. And I think one reason that people cite is that women are sometimes overburdened with many household chores. They don't have access to help. They don't have time to actually go out and exercise, as an example, and people who live in South Africa can relate to that. And things like access to healthy foods. It is fairly expensive to actually access healthy foods, which is why I know in Vitality we would discount healthy meals. So access to healthy food is not easy. It is not uncommon for you to find people actually finding it cheaper to purchase non-healthy food items versus purchasing food items. So that's another reason why. And we know that things like stress can contribute to emotional eating. That has been reported as well, and there's medical conditions as well that can contribute to someone being overweight and obese.
Thank you so much, Dr. Musima Mabunda, and also for confirming that actually stress, which does lead to binge eating sometimes, leads to obesity. I've been telling people that stress yanonisana. It's a minute after 5:05, time for the news headlines.
Quick look at the headlines. The Department of Basic Education says it's developed a new plan as a guideline for all provincial departments of education to enable them to manage their own plans for learning materials. Police say they haven't made any breakthrough yet in relation to a shooting incident in which 3 people were killed on Riverlea, south of Joburg. And the SIU says it'll institute civil litigation to recover money that was misused on a chicken farming project in Marikana in the northwest. Is a full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Reminder, if you're driving from Pretoria to the airport at OR Tambo International, there are 2 things you need to worry about. Number 1 is a crash on the N1 South at the R21. Now, that has pushed traffic back in a queue to Atterbury Road. That's heavy by itself. Once you get through that, you pick up the R21, and then you sit from just south of St. George's Hotel all the way down through Clayville and all the way down to some roadworks in the Tembisa area. That's been a very, very heavy backlog on the R21, but keep in mind that is the second queue you work through after you get off the N1 mess as well. well. Joburg side, the Mike 1 from Parkdale up to Caller Drive stays very heavy this afternoon. Issues around the Melrose area. Coming out of Durban, it's busy these days. The N3 from Sherwood right through the roadworks to Paradise Valley into Pinetown still clogged up. A broken down truck on the M7 heading out towards the Belleville Road exit of Queenswich, so the M7 to Pinetown's backlogging from the N2 highway as well. And then Cape Town very heavy. It looks a bit like morning time going into Cape Town on the N2 this afternoon. Morning time queues. You've got two crash scenes, one at Mowbray Main Road and one in Hospital Bend. Now both of those queues to push N2 traffic right back as far as Lunga, back towards sort of Bunga Avenue. And then if you try to get out of Cape Town on the N1, there's a bit of flooding after some rain and a collision scene. Pretty much the same sort of place. N1 outbound just before the N7 bridge, and that is causing a big backlog of traffic from the elevated freeway right back into the CBD. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Duming Kapele.
Aldrin, you're right. Stress sanontana, literally sanontana.
I've been telling people, and you know the thing is that when they bump into you and like you put on a bit of weight, you know.
They
and
think
what's his name again? From Kaiser Chiefs. But anyway,
shade.
But unlike him, I'm saying like, you know, you put on a bit of weight and then people look at you and they're like, pila kamnandi.
But there's a thing called emotional eating.
Exactly. It's stress.
Well, anyway, let's get straight into what's happening in your world of sports. General tickets that were made available to the public this morning for the Springboks' first test against Ireland at Loftus on the 6th of July was sold out in just 30 minutes. So a crowd of 51,700 fans will be expected in Pretoria as the Boks kick off their home international season. Now, not all is lost though. There's still hospitality and suite tickets available for purchase, and there's also a possibility that more tickets could be made available. Tickets for the match started at 350 rands. In football, the derby between Cape Town City and Stellenbosch FC is the headline fixture of the midweek DStv Premiership action. Stellies beat the Citizens 1-0 when the teams met in the league earlier this year, and a win or draw will see Steve Barker's side extend their unbeaten run in this fixture to 7 league matches. Meanwhile, AmaZulu will take on Morocco Swallows in the league tomorrow at the Kingsway Tini Stadium as they look to return to good league form. AmaZulu's league form is currently not the best as they suffered 2 defeats in a row in the DStv Premiership at the hands of Cape Town Spurs and league leaders Mamelodi Sundowns, respectively. Now, Usutu are currently occupying 11th position on the log, just 1 point behind Golden Arrows. As for Morocco Swallows, the team put up an impressive performance against Kaiser Chiefs in the league, holding them to a draw, putting more pressure actually on Amakosi. And as they are third from the bottom in the league standings, but they have a cushion of being 7 points ahead of Richards Bay, who have 13 points. Meanwhile, Arsenal head into tonight's match against Sheffield United, looking to extend their 6-match winning run in the league. Arsenal sit third in the league table, 5 points behind log leaders Liverpool, and they're on a winning run where they have scored 25 goals. Manager Mikel Arteta knows that his free-scoring Arsenal side could rely on goal difference if they are to win the Premier League this season. And despite heading into the weekend 2 points off top of the table in third, the Gunners now boast the best goal difference in the league.
Yes, for sure. It's an important element there. First of all, you have to earn the right to win the games, and then we want to be ruthless and efficient in front of goal, and I think lately we've been really good.
Well, Arteta thinks that the return of key players will be critical for Arsenal to change games during the title run-in. In cricket, despite taking the Sunrisers Eastern Cape to back-to-back SA20 titles, Proteas T20 captain Adam Markram will no longer captain the Sunrisers Hyderabad in this year's Indian Premier League. Australia captain Pat Cummins will replace Markram for this year's edition, which is scheduled to start from the 22nd of March. Now, under Markram's leadership last season, Hyderabad finished last class 10th, winning just 4 of 14 matches. And Cummins had withdrawn from last year's IPL to focus on international cricket, but re-entered the auction for the 2024 season. Anything's off with tennis. Andrew Rublev won his appeal against losing his ranking points and prize money after being disqualified from the Dubai Tennis Championships. The Russian was defaulted for unsportsmanlike conduct in his semi-final against Alexandra Bublik, and he basically screamed in the face of a line judge following a dispute call in the third set. However, his fine of over 693,000 rands for the code violation remains in place after the appeal. On that note, it's a wrap from my side. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumin Kapele.
Catch the Insider SA this Monday evening at 6 as 10,000 Hours at the Piano elevates South Africa's teenage pianist Mike Wang to the peak of music. DJ Nilofa Said turns afternoon traffic jams into the best part of your day. And para-athlete Darren Thomas wins hearts, minds and medals in Miami, USA. That's the Insider SA this Monday evening at 6. Repeat Saturday at 1 p.m. and Sunday morning at 10:30 on S3.
Some say, amadoda ayipheli. Others are saying, X ongasoveli. Black and white tackles gold and black in the DStv Premiership. This is the Soweto Derby, Mzansi's biggest football jamboree. Sazoshuba, Amapagania versus Amakhosi on Saturday 9 March at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And it's time for a Moneyum Web market update with Jimmy Moya. Jimmy, good evening. Welcome to the show. So looking at the two-pot retirement system, which has been an interesting one because when we're expecting for it to be implemented in March, and then there was the pushback, the industry saying, no, push it back to 2025, and at least there was a settlement that let's do it in September.
Good evening, Aldrin. Good evening to me and good evening to the listeners. Yes, this has been going back and forth forever now, and even with the compromise that's set for September, that's where it stands at the moment. I wouldn't be too surprised if closer to the time we potentially get a different conversation that comes out of that. Remember that implementation date would effectively be after the elections that will take place at the end of May. So very real possibility that we could find different outcome from a new Parliament as we approach that deadline. But for now, we proceed as business is, and we take it as it stands, and we're going to go look into that and see what the implications are of the two-pot retirement system, trying to navigate that, understanding how the two-pot retirement system works, because there's actually 3 pots and not 2, and there's so much to get into there. But we're going to dig into as much of it as we can and hopefully try and break down some of the important bits around understanding that. We're also going to speak to RCL and Bidvest. Both of them put out their results for the first half of the year ended December this morning, and we're going to chat to both companies to see how they've both fared and get a sense of what their prospects are going forward. In the case of RCL Foods, I can give you a spoiler there. They're looking to list Rainbow Chicken as a separate entity on the JSE. They're looking to unbundle, similar to how Transaction Capital's looking to unbundle We Buy Cars. It'll be interesting to see what RCL Foods has planned for Rainbow Chicken and their other business units, but we'll dig into that when we look at that. For now, the markets have had quite an interesting day, especially if you are still on the Bitcoin bandwagon. That has moved up quite a bit, and Henko Creer has been keeping an eye on that for us throughout the day, and he joins me now to take a look at some of the market movements. Good afternoon, Henko. Thanks as always for keeping an eye on the markets. Bitcoin above 65,000, starting off the week 6% in the green.
Yes, Jimmy. Good evening to you and to Aldrin, and good evening to all the listeners. Yes, Bitcoin going for gold again, but then also gold was doing very, very well today, and we'll get to that just now. We'll start by having a look at what's going on overseas. US markets at this stage trading weaker and is now about 0.3% down, and then European stocks finished in the mix with the FTSE 100 losing 0.6% today, the DAX 0.2% weaker, but the CAC 40 in France finished today 0.1% up The JSE, for most of the day, it traded almost unchanged throughout most of the day, could not make up its mind as to whether it wanted to go up or down, and then here right by the end of the afternoon's trading, it finished 0.2% weaker, and that was at a closing level of 72,633 points. The industrial index also lost 0.2%. The resources index gained 1% today, but then the financial index lost 1%. NSFAS finished the day 2.5% weaker, Process 2% down, as well as British American Tobacco and First Rand. They each also finished the day 2% weaker, and then Anglo, Standard Bank and AB InBev each lost 1.2% today. Other companies, smaller companies than these 10 largest companies on the JSE, smaller ones that lost quite a bit today, was a company by the name of Montauk Renewable Energy. It lost 9%. Then we see Mass, which lost 7.5%. Northern was 7% down. And Implats as well as Amplats finished the day 4% weaker, followed by Tiger Brands, Italtile and AECI, which each finished the day 2.5% weaker. But back to the positive side of things, and like I said, if you maybe invested in some gold companies, mining companies today, you would have had a great day, because there's a company like Anglo Gold, 8.5% stronger today. Bidvest finished 7.5% up. Then back to the gold mining companies, Harmony, DRD Gold and Goldfields, each gained 7%. And you see other companies like MultiChoice, MTN and Truist, they each finished the day 4% better off. Then the gold price is currently $2,100 an ounce. Silver is trading at $23.50. Platinum $895 and palladium at $955 an ounce. The price of Brent crude is currently $83.50 a barrel, and the rand slowly but surely starting to look up a bit. You'll pay on the dot 19 rand for a US dollar, then 24 rand 15 cents for a pound, 20 rand 67 for a euro, and 12 rand 40 for an Australian dollar. Bitcoin is currently trading at $66,000, and that is 1.3 million rand. Jimmy, that's how the markets performed today.
Thank you very much for that update, Henku. Bitcoin clearly moving in a direction of its own, and we'll dig into this and other stories a little later on. I'm particularly looking at some of the headlines that came up today that might be of interest. Canal Plus has to make a mandatory offer on MultiChoice. That date has been extended by a couple of days to the 8th of April. And also, Apple was fined £1.5 billion in Europe. But I'll tell you more about that just after 6. For now, Aldrin, back to you and the team.
Thank you so much. Jimmy Moya back again just after 6 o'clock. We're taking your calls on 086 000 2032 and your voice notes on 0614 104 107. You can also drop me an X at Aldrin Sampear.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Hi, Aldrin. Checking if the NSFAS does pay the laptop for the students. Please assist. This is anonymous. Thanks.
Yeah. So if you go into the NSFAS website and just search NSFAS, or if you can go into a search engine as well, just search NSFAS digital learning device. According to the website, since COVID-19, there is a program that they came up with to enhance the blended learning methodology, and they do provide laptops. You order the laptop, and I think you get a laptop bag as well with the laptop charger, and then it gets delivered to you. And according to the website, no one other than the student who is approved to receive the laptop may collect the device. So go on to the NSFAS website and look for a digital learning device, or just search in your search engine NSFAS digital learning device, and you'll get more details with regards to that.
Adrian, see, when it comes to USA and LGBTQ, it is what I don't understand about USA is selective reaction towards countries who have the same stance, because it looks to me that they react very firm against African countries which are against LGBTQ, but hardly say a word or make threats of sanctions or actually take those sanctions forward when it comes to the countries like Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Iraq, Malaysia, UAE. Selective.
Good afternoon, Aldrin. I think your one voice note was incorrect. It was Lindiwe Sisulu that smuggled that woman into South Africa from an African country, not the current person that is under investigation.
No, it is Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula who put on that flight a lady from Burundi who was allegedly dating her son. It is Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. It's not Lindiwe Sisulu. Michaels is joining us from Gqeberha. Good evening.
Evening, Aldrin. Just a quick one, right? I'm a student accommodation service provider.
Okay.
Right? And there's a whole lot of confusion now as I speak. Because, you see, as service providers, student accommodation service providers, we used to deal with the university, off-campus student accommodation, right? Run by the university. But now we're supposed to deal directly with NSFAS. And they've got a portal where you go, you register, and so on and so forth. But there's still a confusion as to where is it? Is it still the university or is still NSFAS? It's just, I don't know how, there's a whole lot of confusion. Some are saying, is the university? When you ask the university, they said, no, we are handling it. When you ask NSFAS is, no, you're dealing directly with us. It's a mess. Let me just put it that way.
Well, they say that they're going ahead with the portal and that the money will be coming directly from NSFAS.
But the university, if you ask the university is also saying they're going to pay for February and March. They said that on Friday, where there was a meeting, and the university said, we're going to pay for Friday, we're going to pay for February and March.
It's very confusing, Michaels, because now, if you listen to that interview with the spokesperson, Ishmael, initially he said all the money will be going to the students. So the university will be paying directly all the money to the students, including accommodation money. And then later on saying that no, actually, it is actually the money is going to come from the portal from NSFAS paid to the accommodation providers.
Yeah, it's I don't know.
Please do give us an update once you get any headwinds with regards to that. If there is an update on your end, Michaels, I would really appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate your time. Michael's joining us there from Gqeberha. Let's go to Shimron, who's joining us from Sandton. Good evening.
Good evening, Aldrin. How are you?
I'm well. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Good. So, Aldrin, I just wanted to comment on one of your news items a little bit earlier.
Sure.
With regards to the former minister Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula.
Yeah.
And that whole Sunday Times story where, as all the opposition parties have rightfully called, they rightfully have called for her resignation. If the ANC had any sincerity with the so-called new dawn that they must have mentioned more times than they've actually done days of work, I'm yet to see, I don't know about you, I'm yet to see any fruition of this so-called new dawn. I mean, where have there been even one high-profile arrest? Why was Gwede Mantashe not called to the State Capture Commission? He was the leader of the ANC.
No, he was. He was called. He did testify.
But the fact is, why has there not been one high-profile arrest apart from that botched case against Machela Koko and the other ESCOM individuals? entire the last 4 years, apart from I have to admit, I think he did a good job on COVID, but I want to know what achievements has Rama, please wait. He's no longer called Ramaphosa. He's Rama, please wait, because that's his favorite expression. Please wait. We're getting to that. When exactly are we going to get to that?
Trust the process, Shimron.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Shimron, there from Centre. Maybe one day, maybe towards the end of the 6th administration, we should have a full-on conversation and in-depth analysis of the 6th administration under the leadership of President Cyril Ramaphosa. Maybe you should do that.
The Northwest, the Provincial Legislature Portfolio Committee on Economic Development, Environment, Tourism, Agriculture and Rural Development will conduct public hearings on the 6th of March on Climate Change Bill and Public Procurement Bill at Zirasta Municipal Hall, Naka Mudri Mulema, Potchefstroom Banquet Hall, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, Khanyisa Auditorium Hall, Dr. Ruth Sohomozi Mompati, and Mabudisa Community Hall in Muruleng, Buchanala District. All hearings start at 10 o'clock.
Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
Our Formula One correspondent, Prince Ndiweni, ahead of what is going to be a fascinating year of racing. There's so many races on the calendar. We spoke about that last week. Can we anticipate any surprises early on, or do you think it's going to be more of what we saw last year?
Watch out for the Racing Bulls. They had a surprising spike in performance over the practice sessions. Yuki Tsunoda has also now out-qualified Daniel Ricciardo. Those things could be sort of, obviously strategy split, maybe Yuki having a qualifying car, or it could be Yuki actually being faster than Daniel and that Racing Bull having a lot of pace hidden beneath the hood. So watch out, I think, for them. They haven't had the best of a couple of years.
Top Sport on SAFM. Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Hi, Aldrin. Okay, thanks. Apologies. I must have got that wrong.
Good afternoon, Aldrin and SAFM listeners. Aldrin, Maruone, Hasipula Garegana, Atiba Mipula Yaskayana. Nimusione, Pabonale Mollo Papa. When there's a smoke, there's fire, definitely. Even if these allegations are not true.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
We've come to the end of our voyage. Thank you so much for choosing Flight SAFM BTH 326 with me, Aldrin Sampear. Today we are playing out with Two-Face, African Queen, and our parting shot is from Morgan Benton, who once said, "Never let your fear decide your fate." And Modi Sahotla is reading our credits this evening.
Visit irockin.com for more Nigerian music anytime, anywhere.
Thank you very much. Flight 326 with our captain, Aldrin Sampear. This is Mudisa Kotla in Mahikeng. Let me take this opportunity once again to thank our team members, Kanya, Temba, Dumisia and Charles and Vusi. Thank you very much. It was very nice show. Thank you very much, our captain, Aldrin. Modisa Kotla Mahiken, thank you very much. Until we meet tomorrow again on our flight through to 6. Modi Marumo Mahiken, thank you.
And remember to love each other and lead with compassion. Dotsins, enjoy the rest of your evening.
Aldrin Sampear on Beyond the Headline.
No ordinary thing, a supernatural being. And no, you are brighter than the moon, brighter than the star. I love you just the way you are. And you are my African queen, the girl of my dreams. You take me where I've never been. You make my heart go ding-a-ling-a-ling. Oh, you are my African queen, the girl of my dreams. And you remind me of a thing, and that is the African beauty. Yeah. Ooh, you are my African. million. You stand as one, they are standing one. I look into your eyes, girl, what I see is paradise.